Jersey.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Well, that didn't go so well last night, but one positive from the Phillies game that I see is no more fifth starters the rest of the way. You can retire the fifth starter spot for the 2024 season, and it was an epic failure, that spot in the rotation. You know, $18 million a year doesn't quite get you what it used to, does it? It's crazy that inflation is carried over to the baseball diamond, where a guy making $18 million isn't good enough to be your fifth starter, your first man out of the bullpen, or quite frankly, be on your roster. What's up, everybody? This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform, at Mike Gill Show on YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe there to watch the show. We've got you till 6. I know that, man, it's funny because there are so many things that we can complain about, but I totally understand last night being one of those moments where you're like, all right, enough is enough already. I would ask the questions, and listen, it's my job to ask the questions. I don't have to agree with my question. They start Tyler Banks last night, okay? Banks gets the start. You didn't want to see Walker. Fine, they go Banks. At the moment that Banks is not competitive last night, the moment that Banks needs to come out of that game because, quite frankly, he was not very good, you knew where this game was going, did you not? You had a feel. Now, the Phillies are up 1-0, right? They're up 1-0 in the game. So they get the early lead, and Banks gets through the first inning. Okay, here we go. Well, Banks, I don't know how many starts Banks has. Tanner Banks, Tyler Banks, whatever the heck his name is. Banks is basically a situational lefty. So I don't know how many times Banks has started in his career. But he goes out for the second inning of work, and it doesn't go all that well. Banks comes out for the second, and he can't get out of the second. And it was at that moment when they made the call to Taijuan Walker, and you're thinking, all right, man, what are we trying to prove here? Like, really, Walker? Now, the skeptic would ask that question. Why the hell are you going to Walker? It's the second inning of the game. You're in the game. You have a shot. And then you bring in Taijuan Walker, who's obviously been horrendous. And he was maybe at his worst last night, although he didn't give up the tater shot that he normally does. He couldn't throw strikes. He's walking guys. He's all over the place. But you brought him in a position to fail. All right? Rob Thompson last night brings Walker in, and he's like, hey, bases loaded. You know, I told him ahead of time we might bring you in a dirty inning. Well, that's doing the man dirty. All right? That is from top to the bottom all the way through is you put that guy in an awful situation last night to fail. And guess what? He took you up on your offer, and he failed miserably. Now, Kobe Allard came in, and he got hit hard as well. He gave up 4 runs. He did have 5 strikeouts in the game. But, you know, it was one of those nights where Banks started the game. He gave up 3. Walker gave up 3. Allard gave up 4. You know, it was one of those nights where either A, you basically wash your hands and live to fight another day, or why is Walker even pitching in the game? I think most of the people out there are asking the question, why is Walker still pitching? Well, I think you know the answer and you don't like the answer. Until Dave Dombrowski gets rid of him, he's on the roster. And a game like last night, when you're throwing a bullpen game, you don't have a lot of options in the second inning of a bullpen game. Like, who did you want to bring in the second inning of the game? I don't want to bring in Taijuan Walker either. I know. You wanted to bring in Kobe Allard. Fine. Well, I'll play along. Kobe Allard comes in the game. Now, I think the logical thing is Kobe Allard would have came in there. Now, he threw 4 innings last night. He gave up, 5 runs in the game. So now the score is essentially the same. It is, if he gives up 5 runs, but the part of it that changes is you can go to your more high leverage bullpen arm. So I cannot condone at any stretch of the imaginations why they would turn to Taijuan Walker last night. Now, I understand a lot of this is probably discussed before the game. Look, Banks is going to go out there, and he's going to try to give us 2 innings. And then we're going to have to go to, this is where the decision comes in. We're going to have to go to somebody who can get us 3 or 4 innings. When you run a bull, and this is why I hate these bullpen games, because when you're pitching a bullpen game, you are essentially saying, we need to use 4 to 5 to 6 pitchers. And all 4, 5, 6 pitchers, they have to be on their best. Otherwise, like someone in the 4, 5, or 6 is probably not going to hold up their end of the bargain. And last night, you didn't only have one guy didn't hold up his end of the bargain. You had 3 guys not hold up their end of the bargain. So did the Phillies go into the game last night? You know, some people were kind of calling it the hangover game. Well, their lineup was not a hangover lineup. They played their guys last night. So did they go into the game last night thinking, look, we know we have the 5th starter situation. We can't throw Walker out there to start the game, so we'll go with somebody else. But to get us through this game, we're going to have to somehow figure out how to get to the 5th or 6th inning with the group of the lower leverage guys. And I think last night, it's one of those things. Look, we got 5 games left. We got to figure out a way to get through this day. And I know the fans, we want to win every single day. And I'm not saying that this is a tap on the back scheduled loss, but your starting pitcher last night did not get you through the game. Your second guy basically ended the game for you. So the first guy wasn't very good, and the second guy was worse. But why do they keep going to Walker? Like, I get it. Hey, listen, he's on the team. He's making $18 million. It's the second inning of a game. You got to try to get through it. But now it's getting to the point where he has no confidence. You heard him after the last game he pitched. He just has no confidence left. So at this stage of the game, you got to go to somebody else. You've got to give somebody else the opportunity before he gets the opportunity. Because I get it. Like, you're trying to show the other guys, hey, we're not going to quit on you. You know, we're going to keep going to you. Great. But at what point do these players then say, look, you've given this guy enough chances, and he's not getting the job done, and now we're in the middle of a race for the number 1 seed, and it's admirable that you turn to him in this situation, but listen, this guy's out of chances. This guy's out of chances at this point. Because Banks comes in, and he hits, what did he do? He struck out the first guy, so he actually, got off to a good start after getting through the first inning. I think he got through the first inning cleanly. In the second inning, he strikes out the first guy. Then he hits a guy, and I think Nico Horner, singled. They got first and second, and then they who was that laid the bunt down, and now you got bases loaded. So it's bases loaded with 1 out, and he goes to Walker in that spot. Like, I don't understand at all how anybody's mindset could be, I'm going to go to Walker here. You're trying to get a ground ball, right? You're trying to get a ground ball double play. Well, Walker has been giving up tater shots left and right. Not giving up ground balls. He's giving up bombs. So, if anything in that spot, maybe I'm trying to go to Ruiz, but Walker, at nowhere on my lineup card is Walker's name coming in, bases loaded, 1 out. Never. And I don't care if, I don't care what you're trying to accomplish. Walker's not pitching in the playoffs. He won't be on the playoff roster. So there's no reason to bring him in that spot, no matter what the plan was. Nobody could have got together and said, listen, if it's the second inning and the bases are loaded, we're going to have to go to Taijuan Walker here. That should never have been on anybody's tongue at the tip of it. Nowhere. And Walker comes in and proceeds to walk a guy, walk another guy. He did get a ground ball somewhere in there. I think he got a ground ball to Dansby Swanson. And you're thinking, all right, it's 3-1. Maybe he can kind of settle in and get you out of this inning. Look, if it's 3-1, he comes in with inherits the bases loaded and gives up 2. You're still in the game at least. Well, no, that didn't happen either. He gives up another hit. Bellinger came up, and I think Bellinger ripped one, and he's up 6-1 now. So, look, last night's one of those games where the decision to put Walker in the game, it's unjustifiable. At this point, I get it. All the other times, he started some of these random games, and you're like, look, who else do we have? You made the decision to not start him in this game. Kudos to the organization for having enough of a clue to not start him last night. But how did you come up with the idea to put him in the game in the second inning? That one is unjustifiable. For whoever we want to blame. You want to blame Rob Thompson. You want to blame the organization for saying, look, listen, before the game, we're going to have a plan. It's going to be Banks is going to start because we can't start Walker. But let's bring Walker in the second inning. Nah, I can't get behind that one. I can't get behind that at all. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Listen, the Phillies right now, they are battling for that number 1 seed, and last night was a game in which you're playing against the Cubs, who basically have nothing to play for. Not basically, they're eliminated already. And I know just because teams are eliminated doesn't mean that they're quitting. They're major league teams. But you had a chance last night, because I think the Dodger game was late, but I think the Dodgers lost last night. But with the Dodgers losing last night, they're playing, I'm pretty sure they played the Padres. So the Padres have now creeped up into a spot where you're getting to a point where they might be able to catch you now. So, yeah, the Padres beat the Dodgers. They did you a favor there. Thank you very much, because you're still just a half game behind the Dodgers. See, if you win that game last night, now the Dodgers are behind you half a game. But because the Padres beat the Dodgers last night, the Padres have creeped up on you. So it was a rough night watching that situation unfold. I don't know how at this stage of the season, look, the rest of the season, July games, August games, we complain about the 5th starter. You know, it is what it is. You got to get through 162 games. You got to get through 9 innings every single night. Somebody lousy pitches a lot of those innings for every team. You know, one of the problems the Dodgers are having right now is they've got Taijuan Walker, their version, and he's got to pitch for them. Everybody's got a Taijuan Walker decision. And it's maybe not Taijuan Walker, but we just don't have a 5th guy. We just don't have a guy every 5th day that we can count on. Every team is kind of in that spot. But the Phillies did not have to pitch Taijuan Walker last night. To me, it's unjustifiable. You're too late in the season. The games are too important. And you're at a point where what's the message to the guys in the locker room? I get it. You're trying to tell the guys in the locker room, hey, we're going to trust you. We're going to keep sticking with you. Well, the last week of the season, you've got enough opportunities. So I can't justify it. You know, listen, August 14th, I need a 5th starter. I know Walker stinks, but what else am I doing? Fine, okay. I got to pitch Walker. I get it. Like, I have some common sense to understand they don't have anybody else. Like Kobe Allard winning the game last night. Somebody texted last night, hey, Kobe Allard, because he had 5 strikeouts. I think he got through a couple innings. But he ended up turning into Kobe Allard last night. I mean, he got hit hard. You know, he gives up, 5 runs. I mean, Allard came in, did an admirable job, but I even would advocate, listen, in that spot, instead of Walker, the aesthetics of Walker, go to Allard in that spot. Now, I guess they had a right-handed batter up. I mean, that's why I say maybe Ruiz would have been the guy to go to. You can't go to Walker in that spot. You just can't go to Walker in that spot. I can't justify it in any stretch, in any way. Whoever makes the decision, and I know Thompson gives the guys the manager, so he's the face of the decision. It's a terrible decision by the organization to come together and say, Walker is still a part of our bullpen plan. For the last 5 games of this season, you can't do it. It's unjustifiable.
Kobe Allard gave up 4 runs and 5 hits over 4 innings. He also had 5 strikeouts, as you mentioned, but he still gave up 4 runs.
Yeah, he wasn't great. I said all 3 guys. The problem with the bullpen game is
Banks gave up 3, Walker gave up 3, Allard gave up 4.
Well, the 3 that Banks gave up were inherited. They were charged to Banks.
Right, you mean Walker gave up.
Walker inherited Banks' runs.
Right.
And they get charged to Banks. Yes, right. Banks came out of the game with the bases loaded. Walker came in, walked 2 guys.
Right.
So he walked in 2 of Banks' inherited runners.
Conveniently.
Yeah, so you've got, and by the way, Walker came in the 3rd and actually got out of the inning. He struck out the first guy, then he gave up a double, and then I think the next 2 guys he got out. So he doesn't give up a run then. He came in the 4th and didn't give up a run in the 4th either.
Correct.
Actually, I think they put Allard in for him in the 4th. But because he walked Happ and then.
He had a scoreless 3rd.
Yeah, he had a scoreless 3rd. Then he walked Happ and then Swanson doubled off of him. And that's when they brought Allard in. But Allard came in and struck the first 2. I think maybe he struck out the first guy. Then the guy popped up. Bellinger popped up. And then he struck out the next guy. So Walker and Allard combined in the 3rd and 4th to give up nothing. Allard then pitches a clean 5th. And then in the 6th is when they got to him. Bellinger tripled off of him, if you remember that. He gave up the single to Amaya to start the inning. Swanson hit the double. So now you have 2nd and 3rd. Bellinger cleared the bases. He tripled. That made it 9-2. And then the ground ball to short, Bellinger scored there. That made it 10-2. So Allard, he held him in check for an inning in the 3rd, and then he got hit around. They went back to him in the 7th, and he actually got out of the inning. So he had the one bad. They each had the one bad inning. But that's the problem when you go with the bullpen game. You have that one guy in the bullpen chain who has the bad inning. Well, unfortunately, right? Unfortunately, they all had a bad inning last night. 609-403-0973. I know you're always late to the party, but I'm always happy to see you finally come around to your senses. You were the last one to figure out Wentz was bad, last on Ben Simmons, and now last on Walker. You might not listen very closely. I think Walker's awful. I don't think Walker belongs on a big league roster. I think he's horrendous. He should never be pitching. But I am smart enough to understand why he's pitching. I might not like him, but I'm not going to sit here and sound like a fool. He pitches because he makes $18 million. I don't like Walker at all. I think he stinks. I've never liked Walker. Never. So, Ben Simmons, you can make all the fun of the Ben Simmons you want. He will always have accolades that you will look at and say, if I took his name off the back of his jersey and gave you his accolades, you say this guy was a really good player. So you sound like an idiot. Carson Wentz has just got injury problems. I mean, Wentz was very good. Then he got hurt. I mean, what are you going to do? He stinks now. Wentz has been awful because of the injuries. I think Wentz's injury. So not late to the party. I'm just the first one to be realistic. I don't like to be a complete blowbag and just say, I told you Wentz sucked and Simmons sucked. No, at one point, Wentz was good. At one point, Simmons was good. And now they're not. Walker, never good. He has not been good. He had one good month for the Phillies. He had one good month where he was 5-1 with a 1.90 ERA, and he carried that team. Walker won 15 games for this team last year somehow. He carried that team through the summer last year. He was the best pitcher they had. This year, he has been awful almost in every single start. So late to the party, I opened the door to the party on Walker. Here, come on in, everybody. He stinks. Pour it on him as much as you want. So I don't know what you're listening to, pal, but you are like many out there who have trouble selective hearing, and I'm used to it. Selective hearing is a very big thing with people who listen to the radio. But Taijuan Walker has no business ever pitching. But what I have said, okay, what I have said is this is Dave Dombrowski's fault. Until he releases Walker and he is still on the big league roster, what are they supposed to do? Now, you could say Thompson doesn't have to put him in the game. I think he didn't have to put him in the game last night. When he was being told, hey, he's on the roster, you need to start him. It wasn't until Walker was so bad that Thompson said, now we need to have a talk about this. He said, now we need to have a talk about that, meaning now I got to go talk to my bosses and tell them I can't keep trotting this guy out there. And then they finally sat him. And then his replacements were so bad that they actually had to go back to him. Now, unjustifiable if you ask me. I wouldn't have gone that route. However, last night, no justification of putting him in that game. 0, none, nil, nada. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Listen, I don't mind people disagreeing with me at all. I love it when you disagree with me. It makes it more fun. But at least get it right. Right? At least get it right. You can disagree with me all the time, up, down, all around. In fact, I yearn for people to disagree with me. But don't disagree with me and then get it wrong. That's all. That's all. If you say, hey, you said this, and I'll say, yeah, you know what? I was wrong about that. Absolutely. But Taijuan Walker, never did I think that guy was any good. Not this year. Not this year. You got to be objective. Guys aren't always bad. There are times when they're bad, and then there are times in their careers where look, Taijuan Walker was pretty good. This year hasn't been good all year long. Hasn't been good all year long. And it's admirable that the organization said, look, this is a good guy. He works hard. We're going to keep you. At some point, the chances run out. At some point, your hard work is not paying off. At some point, the performance just isn't there. And I have no problem in July and in August. Like, I'm not one of these guys that complains like you threw a game away in July because you threw Taijuan Walker. No, you didn't throw a game in July. You have to get through these innings. You can't just keep pushing the same guys all season long. Every team goes through trying to find people to fill the innings. So it is justifiable in July to say, listen, I'm throwing Taijuan Walker. I know he stinks, but I need someone to fill these 6 innings tonight. So I have no problem with that because I get it. Not everybody has 5, 6, 7, 8 pitchers in their organization that are capable to get you through the innings in the middle of the summer. And if I'm paying this guy $18 million, I understand I have to use him. Okay, my hands are tied. I might not want to use him. It might not be my first choice, but I get it. But now it's the last week of the year. Now I can't. Listen, now I got to turn my back on you, right? Now I got to turn my back on you. 609-403-0973. Terry and Galloway, I hope we can still. Yeah, Terry, listen, we always can be friends, man. Disagreement's part of the job. Disagreement is part of what makes sports so great. I could care less if you disagree with me. It's fun. It's the best. Hearing disagreements is what makes this job the most fun. If we all agreed with each other, it would be pretty boring to come in here every day. I certainly have to agree with you all season long. Taijuan Walker has been awful the whole season. But I have to be objective and say he actually gave them some pretty good innings last year. In the middle of the summer, you got to give it to him. But I think sometimes it's like, hey, the team says, I remember that guy. Can he get back to that guy? And it's hard, man. It's hard to let it go sometimes for professionals because you want to believe in them. And a guy making $25 million or $18 million, such as Walker, you have to try to believe in him even more because your boss is the guy who said, please give him another shot. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe there on the YouTube channel, and you can watch the show live and be a part of the show each and every day. Mike Greenberg today. Greenie's going to join me at 4:20. Get his thoughts on the Eagles, Nick Sirianni, the NFL through 3 weeks of the season. Jeff Mosher has football at 4. John McMullen at 3 o'clock today. Coming up, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. How big was that game last night for the Phils? Was it a game that they could afford to kind of punt? We'll get his thoughts on it coming up next here on the Sports Bash. I want to tell you about some unbeatable lease offers from my friend Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City. You know, now through the end of the month, which is coming up in the end of this week. So if you want to act on a new car, now's the time to do it. You could drive home a 2025 Integra for just $399 a month with $29.95 down. If you need more room, an RDX all-wheel drive, $393 a month, $49.95 down. Visit Key Acura, ask for Rocco, Tilton Road, EHT, the small but friendly dealer. Coming up, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City and pressofac.com here on the Sports Bash.
It's this.
This country was built on a distinctly American work ethic. But today, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, sending away good jobs and diminishing our capability to make things. American Giant is pushing back against that tide. They make the kind of high-quality clothing staples you need for a comfortable, stylish, and active summer wardrobe. Like vintage-style tees, tough tank tops, breathable polos, lightweight sweatshirts, shorts, and so much more. All made right here in the USA. From growing the cotton to adding the final touches. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs for seamsters, cutters, and factory workers in towns and cities across the United States. And it's about more than an income. Jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. Support America's workers and get 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, code STAPLE20.
With Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2:32 Sports Bash, Mike McGarry, the sports columnist from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, set to join us here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform, at Mike Gill Show, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show, subscribe, and Mike McGarry's here. Here we go. Mike, is that a throwaway game last night, or did you scratch your head at the way the Phillies kind of handled that game?
Just a throwaway game. I mean, after they clinched, they did have a lot of regulars out there, but it's the last time we'll have that number 5 spot in the rotation come by until, March of next season. So, back, I think tonight is a big game. I don't know if they're going to catch the Dodgers.
Half a game behind the Dodgers. They're half a game.
Yeah, and they're certainly in control to at least get that number 2 seed unless they have a complete collapse. So, I chalk up last night to just having that number 5 slot come around in the rotation again.
All right, so were you there last night?
No, I was.
All right, so the game, Banks starts the game. Fine, they decide, I just can't pitch Walker. Okay, they were cognizant enough of that. Were you surprised it's bases loaded, 1 out, that's who they summons from the bullpen?
Not really. Rob Thompson had said going into the week that Walker was going to pitch, that a lot of bulk guys were going to pitch. They had used the bullpen the night before with a lot of high leverage guys. They had used the bullpen a lot on Saturday and Sunday in New York with high leverage guys to try to win those games. So I was not surprised that, I hate the phrase scheduled loss, but I was not surprised that it ended up playing out like that for the Phillies last night.
So last night, Banks, then Walker, then they go to Kobe Allard, and they basically at that point the game's kind of out of reach here. That 5th starter spot's not going to come up the rest of the way. You would think that, that's it for Walker then, right? No more Taijuan Walker the rest of the way, we can imagine. Because last night, I think, to me, Mike, I hear what you're saying, but to me, man, it's a tough spot to tell the team. I get it. Maybe you're saying to the team, we're going to keep having faith in you guys. But he's had enough chances. That's a rough spot. What's the message to the team in that spot last night that you're going back to a guy who just hasn't got the job done?
Yeah, I just think they're looking to cover innings, and I think that was the last time you'll see Taijuan Walker on a mound in a Phillies uniform. I can't imagine them bringing him back in spring training just for the distraction sake of the team and Walker. Can you imagine next February, every start that Walker is going to throw is going to be, well, how'd he look? Can he be the number 5 starter? You know, how is the split? How's he feeling? What's his velocity? It's just, I think it would just be too much for him and the team. I think it would benefit all parties concerned if they figured out a way to get him to another team. Now, obviously, no one's going to trade for him unless the Phillies pay nearly all of his salary. Do they release him? That's $36 million you kind of got to swallow there. But I just can't see, after as bad as this season has been, I can't see Taijuan Walker coming back here and pitching next year for the Phillies.
You hope not. 2 more years, $18 million a year. Don't know how you're going to get rid of it, but that's not my job to figure out. What my job to figure out is to talk to Mike McGarry and ask these type of questions. Austin Hayes last night hitting the 6th spot in the order. What is your take on Hayes' role moving forward? That little triangle in the outfield, him hitting in the 6th hole last night, Rojas in center. How do you think that shape plays out here come playoff time?
Yeah, I have a must-win column coming up on PressOfAC.com soon, or if it's not already up there and in the paper tomorrow. And basically what I say is I see Austin Hayes. I think the best Phillies lineup is Austin Hayes and Brandon Marsh platooning in left field. The numbers just make that an obvious decision. Obviously, Hayes would play against lefties, and Marsh would play against righties. And then I think you put Johan Rojas in center field, because I think his defense makes a difference, and I think it means even more in the postseason, where one run can determine a series, and he can track down a fly ball that can save that run from scoring or keep that run from scoring. I think the Phillies' best lineup is with Rojas, in center field. And Mike, I know he was 4 for 43 in the postseason last year. I know he didn't hit well this year. Just have him bunt every time he comes up, basically, and let him play center field and platoon Marsh and Walker. The numbers of Marsh's success against righties and Hayes' success against lefties, and their struggles vice versa against lefties and righties. You got to platoon those guys, and you got to put Rojas in center field. And if you're losing, then you've got Marsh or Hayes on the bench to pinch hit for Rojas later in the innings. To me, it's a no-brainer.
I agree with you 100% on that aspect of it, because you take a look at Rojas playing center for a full game or 7-8 innings of a game. It gives you more bench moves with bats. I mean, Hayes can hit for Marsh. Then you can have somebody hit for Rojas, a Weston Wilson, or what's the configuration going to be? Is Cal Stevenson, is he back up here? Buddy Kennedy, is he a possibility? It sounds like they're going to go with 14 guys on that playoff roster.
Yeah, and I don't know who the guy is, but I think it would be probably Cody Clements would be the extra guy that they would look for. Maybe Stevenson. I only see Kennedy coming back up if there was an injury to one of the infielders and stuff like that. So I agree. More guys on the bench to give you more options. And to me, Rojas, Mike, his value was shown the other night in that 6-2 game. That game looks like it was an easy game, right? 6-2, Nola dominates. But if Rojas doesn't chase down that line drive to deep center field in the 3rd or 4th innings, which, by the way, I don't think Brandon Marsh catches, who knows how that game turns out? He makes a catch or two a game that other guys can't do, and those catches are even more valuable in October than they are in May, and that's why I think he's got to be in there.
Yep, I agree there. I wish he would bunt more. I mean, I think that's a weapon that they should pull out a little bit more. I mean, no, listen, they don't. This is a team that has struggled, Mike, to figure out ways to scratch runs out. This is where they've had their problems. So I asked the question yesterday. I'll ask you the question. Is this team different, better than the 2022-2023 team?
Well, I think they're better, but they're not different. I think their starting rotation, their depth of the starting rotation is better. I think their bullpen is much better than it was in 2022 and 2023. Although I will say this, Carlos Estevez worries me. I think you're going to be holding your breath in the 9th inning of a playoff game or two when he comes in to try to close it out. So I will say that. But they're the same in the fact that they have the same weakness, right? The strikeouts, the ability for everybody in the lineup to go cold, the ability for everybody in the lineup to chase pitches off the plate and put themselves in bad counts and bad positions. So are they better? Yes. But do they have the same sort of kryptonite that could take them down? Yes, also.
Well, it's funny because you go around the diamond, it's about the same lineup just about everywhere. I mean, you have really, I mean, the offense is about the same exact as it was last year. The pitching rotation, you got Wheeler, you got Nola. I don't know. Do we have a lesser version of Suarez, but you got a better version of Sanchez, so it's kind of a wash maybe there. The only big difference is, as you mentioned, that bullpen. Where in 2022, they had Dominguez and Alvarado, and that was really the only two guys you could count on. You had Bilotti, Connor Brogdon, so their bullpen is much better than that team. Last year, Kimbrel at the back end. You had Hoffman, who wasn't as big of a role. Kirkering was a younger guy who they didn't trust as much. So you got better versions of some of the same guys. The big question is Estevez over Kimbrel and others over Estevez, maybe if he kind of falters. There's where you might be a little different, is in that bullpen.
Well, and watch for the postseason, right? The other night, Hoffman came in, and he went through the heart of the Cubs lineup in the 8th inning. Maybe they mix and match a little bit where Hoffman, depending on when that pocket comes up, and if it comes up in the 9th inning, it'll be Hoffman. But if it comes up in the 8th inning, it's Hoffman. I think it's going to be Hoffman because of his ability to get swings and misses, taking down the heart of the opposing team's lineup. Let's face it, I don't know about you, Mike, but Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman are coming to the plate. Who do you want in the game, Estevez or Hoffman? I'll take Hoffman every day of the week and twice on Sunday, basically.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody has wishing to try to get through that part of the lineup, but it's something that's a real possibility. Half game out. Last night, by the way, I said, look, the Dodgers lost, which kept you a half a game behind them, but they lost to the Padres. You got any pressure coming from the Padres? They're only 2 back with, 4 to go.
Hey, Mike, I mean, if you look at the National League right now, and I think the National League is loaded with these 7 teams that are, basically battling for the 6 playoff spots, right? Those 7 teams, and maybe this is where it's advantageous to maybe get the 2 seed, the team I would want to stay away from is the San Diego Padres. I think they've got playoff experience. They've got starting pitching. They've got bullpen. They've got big bats in Machado, Bogarts. They've got lineup. They've been here before. They've been in Citizens Bank before for the postseason, although unsuccessfully. I think if there's a team to avoid, in the division series, and maybe what you get the 2 seed, you do avoid them. It would be the San Diego Padres. I think they are right now maybe the best team in the National League.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. Take us inside the locker room. They clinched the division for the first time in 13 years. I watched a lot of it on television. It looked like they were, that was an accomplishment for them.
Yeah, I mean, it deserves to be recognized, right? The grind of a season. Division play began in 1969, which is, 55 years ago, and that was just the Phillies' 12th division title, their first in 13 years. So it's definitely an achievement that deserves to be recognized. I thought the celebration, the ruckus at times, was a bit muted. Not what it was in 2022, not what it was in 2023. And I thought that was a good thing. A lot of the time after the players did the spraying of the beer and the champagne and the smoking of the cigars in the clubhouse, a lot of them went out to the field, spent time with their families, quiet with their families. I think that was a good thing. To me, it was saying this team recognizes they've got more to do. They're built to do more than just win the NL East. They've got bigger things ahead of them. And I think they celebrated, sure, it deserved to be recognized. But at the same time, I thought the celebration was a little bit muted compared to past years. And I think that is a good thing, that this team recognizing that there was more to accomplish this season. They're not going to be satisfied with just a division title.
Did you get wet? Did you have the goggles on?
I do a very good job of standing on the periphery and not getting in the crux of things, the middle of things. Occasionally you do get hit with some stray shrapnel of some flying beer or champagne, but I do a good job of lingering on the edges of the celebration, grabbing guys here and there, for interviews and avoiding a full dousing.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, PressOfAC.com. You can read more about it. His coverage of the Phillies run and, of course, the high school football season continuing along here. I know Friday night we'll have some more stuff, but as you get ready to turn the page to this week, what's the big story this week in high school football?
Well, big games on Friday night, number 1 and number 2 in South Jersey. Millville hosts Winslow Township out at Millville's Wheaton Field. And then locally, a huge matchup. Mainland travels to St. Augustine. So those are your two big games in a rivalry weekend. Throw in Absegami and Oakcrest on Saturday afternoon at noon, and Cedar Creek Holy Spirit on Friday night. You got a big weekend of high school football as we begin the second month of high school football and in the first, official weekend of fall. It gets late early, high school football. I say it all the time.
Sure does. And Mike McGarry, of course, will be back on Friday. We'll take a look at the Phillies' final weekend, the NFL, which always moves. The Giants and Cowboys play on Thursday night. We'll talk about that and more with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. All right, Mike, take care, buddy.
All right, Mike, we'll see you down the road. Thank you.
There's Mike McGarry. You make sure you follow him at AC Press McGarry on the X platform. If you're watching the show on the X platform, like the post, you retweet it, get it out there. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Mike Gill Show. Of course, you can watch it right there. We are the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up at 3 o'clock today, John McMullen, the injuries piling up. Who is on the practice field today? Who is not on the practice field today? There's some big names that are sitting this one out, including one name that might surprise everybody who is kind of watching along, and that would be a big problem if this guy doesn't play. We'll have details on that coming up. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
It's Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
252 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. John McMullen next hour. Find 5 ugly 5 best 5 worst teams. Mike Greenberg today at 4:20. We'll talk about his thoughts on the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. You know, got some text messages here. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Mike, I just don't get why they keep going to Walker. You know he's going to suck. Go to others and hope for the best. I mean, you got a complete game shutout from Phillips. Well, I can tell you why they keep going to Walker. They're paying him $18 million. There's your answer there. I mean, this isn't rocket science, people. The contract dictates. You're getting paid $18 million, and the general manager is not getting rid of him. Like, it's one thing if Dave Dombrowski said, listen, we're going to DFA this guy. Until he does that, that's your answer. And by the way, Phillips was so bad. He was so bad. Yes, he threw a complete game shutout one time, and he was so bad every other time. I mean, come on. You can't just keep saying the guy had, like, Taijuan Walker has pitched great games in his career. He's pitched really good games in his career. I said last year he was the best pitcher the Phillies had for the entire summer. June and July, he was awesome last year. So I could say, well, he could be that guy. You can't just say, hey, pitch Tyler Phillips because he pitched good one game. Tyler Phillips' ERA is 6.87. 6.87. Now you would say, so Walker's is worse. Walker's getting paid $18 million and Tyler Phillips isn't. I mean, before you just spew out nonsense, think about it logically. Why is Walker pitching? He's getting paid $18 million. You don't like it, and I don't like it, but at least know the why. Why is he pitching? He's getting paid $18 million. The other guys stink. He stinks. We're going to take the guy we're paying $18 million. And until Dave Dombrowski gets rid of him, there's your answer. It's the same answer every time. Why is this guy playing? He makes the most money. When all options stink, the guy who makes the most money gets the opportunity. He's the veteran. He's the professional. He's the guy who's got the respect in the locker room. The other guys stink, and they don't have the respect in the locker room yet. So it's hard to say, hey, we're going to go to Tyler Phillips with a 6.87 ERA, and he's letting everybody down. I don't want Walker pitching either, but that's the answer as to why. Johnny Mack, next.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
The reason the fourth down decisions are being criticized because they haven't been working. That's the end of the day. They did work in 2022, and they helped us get to a Super Bowl. And Nick Sirianni, he has seen firsthand how much going for it on fourth down can help and improve your chances at winning a game. Obviously, when it's not working, it does the opposite. And these are the unfortunate circumstances you live by as a head coach making these decisions. It's hard.
Every time we go for it on fourth down or set ourselves up to go for it on fourth down, I'm doing what I think is best for the football team at that particular time. I'm doing it because I think it gives us the best chance to win the football game. When you don't convert on fourth down, that's going to be 100% on me, regardless. And that's my role as the head football coach, that when that play doesn't go the right way, there's going to be blame to be had, and that's going to be on me.
Sirianni, Jason Kelce. Basically, Kelce saying there, listen, you're not judging the play call, you're judging the result. Sounds familiar, John McMullen, host of Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, weekday mornings at 8 o'clock. It's when you like the result, you don't judge the play. Sounds like Jason Kelce's a fan of Nick Sirianni being aggressive, and Sirianni saying there afterwards, hey, you're going to judge it. You're going to judge me for it. But it sounds like Kelce and the players are backing the coach in this who is right or wrong. The analytics, the coach, the play call, it's the result of the play we don't like, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've been talking about this for years. One of the reasons I've been talking about it is because talking to people like Jason Kelce over the years. And one of the things that has been sort of my theme this week on my show, and I had you on my show, and I talked about it on this show, is this, conversation's got to be elevated a little bit to the point of the theme of fourth down aggressiveness has been very successful to this team, to the point that, we always talk about the copycats. You want to be that guy that everybody else copies. And in a lot of ways, Vic Fangio defensively has been that guy. The Eagles have been that team. The entire league has followed the Eagles' lead, and it seems like a large portion of the fan base, not everybody, because some get it, a large portion of the fan base has not picked up on that they should take some pride in the fact that the Eagles are the ones everybody's copying.
Yeah, you take a look at around the league, and Kelce talked about it on the New Heights podcast about why a lot of teams around the league, they're going for it on fourth down now. A lot of teams are being more aggressive for whatever reason. That's what's happening league-wide. We see it a lot on Sundays. Sunday, they're going to be in Tampa, we think anyway. Some hurricane possibilities down there. Could have some contingency plans. But Eagles back on the practice field, John, for the first time, getting ready for the Buccaneers, and a lot of injury issues. So let's take a look at some of the names that are there and not there today at practice. Lane Johnson, Mekhi Becton. Let's start with the two offensive linemen on that side of the ball.
Yeah, Mekhi's back. He's practicing. They moved indoors because of the rain here in South Philadelphia, and he was stretching, so he's participating. He's got his helmet. Lane walked in at the end of practice. Not going to participate. Obviously, he's in the concussion protocol, but the fact that he's here is probably a positive sign. And it's very difficult now to get through the concussion protocol in 1 week. But we didn't see Devontae Smith. We did see Lane Johnson. So that's a bit of a surprise. If I were going to bet on one, I would have bet on Devontae Smith just because Lane, has been around a long time, has more of a history of concussions. And generally, it makes it more difficult if you've had a history of concussions to get through the protocol. But positive sign that he's here, at least stretching. And we'll see how it goes throughout the week.
Mailata not out there warming up. Did he participate in practice, or is there something going on there?
Again, it's a walkthrough, so we'll get. He was there. He didn't have his helmet. That doesn't necessarily mean much as you're going through a walkthrough. Dallas Goedert the same way. I don't think is going to be a participant, but he was there catching football. So it may be, veteran players early in the week. They're just being cautious, but I don't think there's any danger of those two missing the game. But it's getting to, even though it's only 3 games, getting to where you start to manage, especially star players. And I wouldn't be overly concerned, but it's probably more of a veteran management type situation, I would say.
A.J. Brown, the hamstring, I think most people anticipate that he would not play. You have the bye next week as well. So do you have any feeling that Brown will play this week?
Yeah, I mean, logically, I would say because the bye week is early and you're getting the extra week, it would make sense to hold him out. And then you get a full 2 more weeks, and he should be completely 100% coming out of the bye. But the Devontae injury complicates things. He wasn't there at practice, so not a good sign early in the week. And maybe you'll have to persevere with Jahan Dotson, Paris Campbell, Johnny Wilson, and have more of a Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert game. And try to go about it that way. It's tough. There's only 17 of these things, so it's tough to play it cautious if somebody can help you. But boy, if you lose A.J. Brown, you see how difficult things are without him. I don't think the Eagles should risk trying to aggravate that thing by pushing it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the tough part of it is if you don't have Smith and Brown, what do you look like moving forward? What do a couple of years ago, last year in the playoff game, they didn't have Brown. That didn't go well. A couple of years ago in Tampa, they didn't have Brown yet. He wasn't on the team. You had Smith as a rookie. That didn't go so well. What does your offense look like without those two?
Well, you've already saw it without AJ. It's very clunky, even with Devontae. That's how I described it on the show this morning. It's clunky. It's just not the same, and it's disappointing to be honest about it because there's plenty of talent, and you can't replace a player like AJ Brown, but you can persevere a little bit better, I would think. And it's disappointing the way the Eagles have handled things when he's not out there. You add Devontae Smith on top of it. If that's the case, it's going to be more clunky. And it's going to be more of the way you've seen it. And it's just the way it's going to be. And you'll probably have to win the game a different way as they did against New Orleans. They were able to win the game a different way. Same thing would be the case here.
We know that Bowles has had some success against, and Nick Sirianni talked about it today, and he went out of his way to say Jalen's been much better against the blitz. The numbers would bear that. Would you anticipate seeing a heavy dose of them coming after him, especially without those weapons? I mean, are you going to see a lot of pressure this week?
Typically, I would say yes. And Todd has had success with it against Jalen Hurts in the past. I do think if you don't have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, that'll change his thinking a little bit. I don't think you'll need as much aggression. But it remains to be seen how he handles it. I am surprised as a whole, though, that Jalen hasn't faced as much blitzing as I thought he would early in the season. And that might continue because of the absence of the big-time playmakers if they don't play. And, again, that's still to be determined.
All right, John McMullen, Burst 365, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. Saquon Barkley, obviously, we talked about him yesterday. I want to kind of see, is there anything more you think they can do with him? Is there more to this? Because it's early. They're still trying to feel him out. Is there more to this, to him in this offense?
Well, the passing game, but I never thought that was going to be a big part of it either way. He hasn't done much as a receiver, which isn't a surprise when you have AJ and Devontae and Dallas in the lineup. Only so much to go around. But when they're not, if in this case, I would think you would want to get them more involved a little bit in the passing game. Really have only one impactful play, the wheel route against Green Bay, and then it's been pretty much nothing in the receiving game. And then from the standpoint of rushing the football, I mean, you got to try to win this game. But at some point, they're going to have to manage these touches. And that if that means getting Kenny Gainwell involved, people are just going to have to understand it. You know, maybe that takes care of itself in certain games where you have a big lead, or in certain games, even if in the other direction. Nobody wants to think about that. But if you're losing, you know, maybe it would be prudent to manage the touches a little bit more. The number is not sustainable at the current rates, and they're certainly most likely going to have to do it at least one more week.
Yep.
And then coming out of the bye, you're probably going to have to address that in some portion. It's hard to imagine that many touches. You're talking DeMarco Murray level of touches when he was with Dallas the year before he came to Philadelphia. It's just, you know, maybe they can get through it and then they don't get much out of them next year. But I would really think they need to manage those touches a little bit better.
Yeah, that would be something, that would be interesting to see how much they keep riding, because really Gainwell and Shipley are, guys who are more suited for catching the ball out of the backfield, that kind of stuff. They're not guys you really want to lean on in the run game all that much.
No, but you have to. I mean, if you look across the league, everybody's sort of got that rotation. And that doesn't mean it's a strict rotation, but you maybe play 3 series with your lead back, and then you go to your secondary back for a series, and you do it that way. And that's probably going to be Kenny Gainwell, or maybe Will Shipley can push for that. But just from the workload standpoint, you have to understand you have to do that at some point. And if people don't like it, they got to live with it.
All right, John McMullen, Birds 365, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. By the way, we talked about Hurts' struggle. 5th time he'll face Todd Bowles' defense, and he is 1-3 in the first 4. 2 of them he's lost in the playoffs. He's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns in those outings. He has 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And you would imagine, the passing game without those 2 guys this week, potentially not going to be a great opportunity. So it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of defense they throw at him. But let's look at the Eagles defense real fast as we take a look at what Tampa Bay does offensively, because they really struggled last week offensively. But do you like the way Philly and Vic Fangio's defense matches up with Baker Mayfield and those receivers?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I don't like the way anybody matches up with Mike Evans. I mean, he's one of those guys, he's getting older, but obviously he's a mismatch. And nobody's got any 6'4", 6'5" corners that can stick with that guy. So it's always a bit of a mismatch. And Chris Godwin's having a big year, but I don't think terribly explosive. I'm not in love with the running back. And, I don't think this is, last week you were saying, all right, this is an explosive team. I don't get that feeling with the Buccaneers. But anytime you got Mike Evans and, you're liable to throw up a 50-50 ball and he might go get it, and you got to live with it. Because, like I said, how are you going to match up with a 6'5" receiver? I've yet to see the 6'5" corner. Tariq Woolen would be the closest, I guess.
Yeah.
He's 6'2", 6'3", but, nobody can match up with that. So I do got to run, Mike. I apologize, but I got some interviews I got to do, but so I got to cut it off. But I appreciate it. Sorry about that.
No problem, man. All right, Johnny Mac. Tomorrow we'll catch back up. He's getting into the locker room. Yeah, the Eagles this year have kind of changed their times with everything, which has kind of knocked a lot of stuff that we do off a little bit. Which is okay. I mean, he's getting in the locker room doing some stuff we'll have for tomorrow's show. But the one other thing I wanted to ask him about was Darius Slay. Apparently, he was at practice today. I don't know if he was out on the field, but as we were talking about Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Darius Slay and Quinyon Mitchell, how do they match up there? So that's something to kind of keep an eye on as well. 609-403-0973. I want to real quick transition to some Philly stuff real quick because the lineup just came out. And there's something in the lineup that sticks out to me that we have to talk about. So let's get into that real quick. The lineup tonight, Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Stott, Realmuto, Marsh, Clemens, Hayes, and then Sanchez on the mound. So why does that stick out a little bit? For two reasons. One, Bohm not in the lineup tonight. They're going with Cody Clemens. Obviously, you got a right-handed pitcher pitching. So Marsh is in the lineup playing center field. Hayes is in left field batting ninth. Now, this is the situation that McGarry and I brought up in the 2 o'clock hour. I hope that this is not a preview of what the Phillies intend to do. Now, I know Clemens isn't going to play third base in a playoff game, but you got Hayes in the 9-hole playing left field. And as McGarry and I talked about in the first hour, he said it's not even a decision in his mind. I agree. Austin Hayes has given you nothing against right-handed pitching. So offensively, it's not that you're getting a step up offensively. And now you've lessened yourself defensively. This move to me, I hope, is not a preview what the Phillies plan on doing in the playoffs. Austin Hayes playing left field and Marsh playing center field. You're weaker defensively in both spots now. You're weaker in center field. And I think Marsh is a better left fielder than Hayes is a left fielder. So now you've weakened your defense in two spots. And look, Austin Hayes in the 9-hole, I wish that he came over here and did what we thought he was going to do. But unfortunately, Austin Hayes has really been a nothing burger against right-handed pitching. So you've now weakened your defense. And in the 9-hole, you have essentially a similar hitter. I mean, Austin Hayes offers minimal power from the right hand, as a right-handed hitter against right-handed pitching. So he doesn't offer you like a big power bat in the lineup and doesn't have the same speed, obviously. So even like the few times that they might get on base, okay? I know Hayes does not get on base. His on-base percentage with the Phillies is .274, which is really bad. And so he's on base infrequently as a right-handed hitter against right-handed pitching, okay? We're only talking about a right-handed hitter against right-handed pitching. Johan Rojas' splits, he's actually better against right-handed pitching, which is, an oddity because he is a right-handed hitter, but he has been better against righties. With Rojas as the 9-hole hitter, you at least say, okay, I got a guy to lay down a bunt. I have a guy that when he gets on base, he can steal a bag. He's got 25 stolen bases this season, and Austin Hayes, 2 stolen bases this season. So there's a big difference there. 120 games for Rojas this season. Austin Hayes with the Phillies on base is .274. Rojas is .279. So again, you got two guys who are pretty similar in the 9-hole. Give me the guy that plays better defense. If all else is the same, I'll take the guy that plays better defense and offers me multiple intangibles. He can bunt. He can steal. He plays better defense. I hope that the Phillies are just trying to get Hayes some more playing time just to kind of get him back into the rhythm here. I don't know if that's the case. We'll see. We'll see if they plan on kind of what they plan on doing moving forward with that whole situation. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform and YouTube at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe, like, rate, review, click it out there. We got the show going on till 6 o'clock tonight. I got so much more to get into. Fine 5, ugly 5. 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL. It's getting harder and harder to do this. Find the 5 best teams and even the 5 worst right now. Carolina won last week. Denver won last week, right? New York won last week. Washington won last week. In fact, I think every team that was in the ugly 5 last week won.
Every team but one who was an underdog on Sunday NFL Week 3 won. All but one.
Yeah, last week my ugly 5 was Carolina 1, Denver 2, New York 3, Washington 4, and New England 5.
They all won.
New England lost.
New England lost.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So 4 of my ugly 5 won.
But the top 4 won.
The top 4. Now, I don't think anybody would question those.
Under normal circumstances, no.
Like if I said these are the 5 worst teams in the league, Carolina, Denver, Giants, Washington, New England, you'd say, yeah, you're not an idiot.
Yeah, but they all won. It's not
all 5 won. All 5 of them won. Fine 5. Kansas City won. Houston lost. San Francisco lost. Buffalo won. New Orleans lost. New Orleans was a little bit of a stretch.
Sounds like we got a shakeup coming up here on the Fine 5 Ugly 5.
Yes, definitely going to have a shakeup here in the Fine 5 Ugly 5. Big time. 40 minutes till football at 4. Jeff Mosher's here today. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. This hour of the show is brought to you by Broadleaf Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Air Conditioning. Your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, installation for generations. 609-390-3907. Visit them at broadleafs.net. I'm Mike Gill. Coming up, Mosher, Mike Greenberg in the 4 o'clock hour. Greeny joins me at 4:20. Knicks Nuggets tonight. Special Knicks Nuggets at 5 o'clock on the drive home. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sport.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret? With Shop Pay, that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/try to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/try.
With Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
328, Fine 5, Ugly 5. 5 best 5 words brought to you by Jenkins & Sons Plumbing Heating for heating and air conditioning, installation, service, and maintenance, plumbing, drain cleaning service, 609-641-6262. Online, jenkinsandsons.com. So, Fine 5, Ugly 5. I don't even know what to do. I don't have 5 best teams. I don't have 5 teams. I can't find 5 teams that deserve to be labeled fine.
Maybe instead of calling them fine, call them adequate?
That would be the word, but they're not fine. There are not fine 5 teams in the league. There are not 5 teams that deserve to be in the Fine 5.
Are there 5 adequate teams?
I mean, record-wise, you would say, okay, Minnesota's undefeated. Do you think they're one of the 5 best teams in the league?
No.
Record-wise, Seattle's undefeated. Are they one of the 5 best teams in the league?
No.
Record-wise, Pittsburgh is 3-0. Are they one of the 5 best teams in the league?
Their defense is one of the 5 best.
I do have them kind of written. Look at I wrote and scribbled them out, and I said I don't have 5 teams. Right now, I have Kansas City and Buffalo. They're both undefeated. I have them in there.
Right.
And then everybody else, like the Jets are 2-1, Houston's 2-1, the Chargers are 2-1, the Commanders are 2-1, Philadelphia's 2-1, Detroit's 2-1, Green Bay's 2-1, New Orleans is 2-1, Tampa's 2-1. I mean, any one of those teams can say we're in the Fine 5. I think Seattle 3-0. I don't think they're one of the 5 best. Minnesota 3-0. I don't think they're one of the 5 best. I don't think that Houston or Pittsburgh at 3-0 is one of the 5 best. So I don't know what teams to put in the Fine 5 this week. It's unprecedented. I don't have a Fine 5. I am punting this week on finding 5 teams that belong as worthy teams in my Fine 5.
So maybe instead of doing a Fine 5, how about give me the 5 teams that you have the most faith in moving forward?
Well, listen, I like the Jets.
You mentioned the Chiefs and the Bills.
I like the Jets as long as Rodgers is healthy. I like the Jets, okay? I think that team's going to keep getting better. Baltimore, I don't know what to think about that team. They won on the road last week. You lose at home to the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders are dog bleep. I mean, come on. The Raiders
beat the Cowboys, who are not very good either.
I don't know what to think of the Cowboys right now. To lose at home the way that they did. Now, they're going to play the Giants tomorrow night. Giants are missing their 2 slots. They got some issues in the secondary. I think it's a get-right game maybe for Dallas. But not that I like them in the 5. Houston, extremely disappointing loss.
I mean, that loss was completely unforeseen. I mean, Brian Flores, if they keep playing this way defensively in Minnesota, he's going to win Assistant Coach of the Year.
Well, that, and then if Sam Darnold is what I keep talking about, he got rushed into a horrible situation with the Jets, then he went to a horrible situation in Carolina, and now, after sitting out a year with as a backup in San Francisco, maybe he's finally got it to click a little bit here. This guy was the number 2 pick of the draft. He had a ton of arm talent, was a really good college quarterback, and just was in some bad situations. Maybe he's finally got the right coach to get the best version of him. And if they do, and Darnold's, look, he was the number 2 pick of the draft for a reason. If he turns into what teams thought he was going to be when they drafted him, Minnesota might be for real.
I think Minnesota is for real. I just don't think they're the top 5 team. I think that's kind of where I differentiate.
Yeah, I don't think they're a top 5 team either, but if their defense is playing real well. Pittsburgh, Justin Fields, another guy, high draft choice. One team, he went there. They did not have a great situation for him. The Steelers are not asking him to do all that much, but their defense is really good. Is that one of the 5 best teams in the league, though?
I would put the Steelers in it. I think the Steelers are the best defense in football right now. So I would put them in the 5.
Okay. Then you have the Chargers. If Justin Herbert's hurt for a little while here, that eliminates them. Cincinnati 0-3. I mean, you could make an argument they belong in the uglies.
They should be in the uglies. They look ugly. I said it last week. I said, there is trouble in paradise in Cincinnati. There is something wrong with that team. And you saw them on Monday night against Washington.
I got to tell you this. Hate to do it to him. I'm a big Joe Burrow fan. He looks like an idiot.
You think it's the hair?
The hair, the outfit. It's to a point where now I have so much money that I look like an idiot. He looked like an idiot the other night. His outfit was ridiculous. Now he's at the point where, like, come on, dude. The money got to you that much that you're buying eccentric-looking clothes to that point where you look like, I mean, it was ridiculous.
I think part of Burrow's problem is he doesn't have anybody in his life to tell him he looks ridiculous.
Well, evidently not, because he looked ridiculous. I forget the hair. His hair is
Slim Shady.
Yeah, it's sophomoric. But the outfit he had on was so bad. It was one of those things where I just have a stupid amount of money, so I'm going to buy stupid stuff. And when you get to that level, I start to question your
commitment.
Yeah, like, what are you in this for? Just to spend stupid money to look like I have so much money, I'll do whatever the heck I want with it? That is a sign to me. I know it might sound preposterous.
No, it's not preposterous, because the person who thinks what you're saying is preposterous doesn't understand that in any walk of life, how you act is a reflection of where your mindset is.
Well, it's just anything. It's like, I have so much money and I am so bored with it that I'm going to go out and just spend money on stupid, like, he probably paid an astronomical amount of money for these threads just to look stupid. Like,
I remember he was at Fashion Week earlier this year. He was hanging around those people.
There's some crossover in Burrow's commitment that has me worried about that whole team situation. Because I loved Burrow. I've been a big fan of the Bengals. They sold me, and he sold me, and he's starting to make me flip-flop on him a little bit, because I think his mind is starting to wander on him. I think the money and the status may have gotten to him a little bit, and that's a worry. So Bengals 0-3. I don't know if they're in my ugly 5. Actually, no, I don't have them in my ugly 5. I do have 5 uglies, which was difficult to pick this week, too, because, look, Miami with Skylar Thompson's one of the 5 worst teams in the league.
Right, with Skylar Thompson.
Or
Tim Boyle.
Or Tim Boyle. Both fair comments.
I mean, poor Skylar got smashed out of the game on Sunday.
So Miami would be one of the worst 5 teams in the league. Currently, without Tua, they are one of the worst 5 teams in the league. New England, They have been somewhat competitive for 2 weeks. Last week they got blown out and looked non-competitive. To me, New England has a bottom 5 roster. They're an ugly 5 competitor. Cleveland has been an ugly 5 competitor. I mean, they have been one of the 5 worst teams that I've seen play this year.
Their
they have been terrible.
Is horrendous.
The quarterback is done. He's a shot fighter. He was once a very good player, and the commitment to the game is now out the window. So they got to move on from him. You got to eat it. You got to move on and start over if you're Cleveland. I feel bad for you. I don't feel bad for you. You paid an idiot, and now you got to pay the idiot, and you either keep playing him or just move on from it. I'm the kind of guy that I've made the mistake, move on from it. Not just keep making the mistake. Now, I know it's not my money, but if you got to write the check, write it and get it over with. Or you're going to have this. This is what you get. That's your result.
Bring back Joe Flacco.
Jacksonville's number 5 in my ugly.
I got Jacksonville higher on my uglies.
That team, and it's another example, okay, of what I talk about with the quarterback. Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 prospect. He was unbelievable.
Yep.
Can't miss. Blah, blah, blah. Drafted number 1. By the way, had some microcosm of success, won a playoff game, got paid $275 million, and that guy ain't winning a Super Bowl. So all these teams that sell their soul to draft quarterbacks, this guy, there is no quarterback coming out of college in the last X amount of years that has been higher thought of than this kid.
He was the highest regarded quarterback since Andrew Luck.
And he's 0-3 and looks like...
He looks like dog do.
He's regressed. So again, stop overdrafting these quarterbacks and stop playing them right away. Look, he played right away, and he's not better. He's worse. He's worse. Jacksonville's in my ugly 5. Their defense is horrible. Horrible. Tennessee is number 4 in my ugly 5 because I think Levis is actually the worst quarterback. No, I take that back. 3 of the worst quarterbacks, 2 of the worst quarterbacks. Lawrence isn't one of the 3 worst.
He's just not playing well.
Levis and Anthony Richardson are the 2 worst. If I was doing Find 5, Ugly 5 quarterbacks, Levis and Richardson are definitely in the 5.
That might be a more fun list at this point.
It's an easier list to come up with. There's 5 quarterbacks who really stink. Levis is one. Richardson's another one. Those 2 guys. And Indianapolis,
Watson.
by the way, you can put them in the ugly 5.
Of course you can.
But they're not in my ugly 5. Tennessee is in there. Their defense has been awful, and Levis is horrendous. I got New England 3, Carolina and Denver are 2-1. I know they both won this week. And look.
They both won the road.
Carolina with Andy Dalton on the road. They won a game. Now they're going to go to Cincinnati. They might have a chance to win that game right now.
Absolutely.
Other options for the ugly 5. You got Vegas.
I got the Raiders in my ugly 5. I think you should take the Panthers out and put the Raiders in.
Giants.
I think the Giants get a week of reprieve because they beat up on the Browns.
Chicago
I have in my ugly 5 because I think that as of right now, I think they're an uglier team than most of these teams.
I think the Rams, Arizona, and San Francisco, who are all 1-2, they all are saved from my ugly list.
Rams and Arizona are still competitive football teams.
Yeah, the Rams just beat injured. The 49ers, and the 49ers are injured.
I mean the big picture of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I know that San Francisco's got injury issues, and that's why they're here. That's why I saved Miami. But how long's Tua out for? He might be out for the year.
He's going to miss at least 4 weeks.
So if he's out for the year, Miami's definitely in the ugly 5 moving forward. I'm holding them off for 1 more week, and it's a tough time for the Find 5 Ugly 5 segment, people. We here at the Sports Bash are trying to evaluate this Find 5 Ugly 5, and I can't find 10 teams that are worthy.
The NFL, it's a very early sample size, but I think we're starting to learn very quickly, Mike, that 2 things matter in this league more than anything else. Coaching and health.
Well, there's no doubt that the health of these teams is creeping in. You got so many injuries right now, and there is a fine line between the 2 teams when you're at full health. The best team and the worst team, there's a fine line. Then a middle-of-the-road team loses a guy or two, and then it just spirals and you're out of control. Cole from LBI, the NFC is a mess with injuries and bad football. Do we really trust Darnold and Geno Smith? Same in the AFC, but I think the Bills are legit. Kansas City is Kansas City, and the Jets are right behind them. Yeah, right now, there's so many question marks. You know, you have Sam Darnold and Geno Smith both undefeated. These are guys that Darnold was the number 2 pick in the draft. Geno Smith was at one point thought to be the number 1 pick in the draft. Now he fell to the second round, played on a lot of bad situations before he finally got to a team that has some weapons for him, and he's turned into a pretty good quarterback. So, listen, I think it puts in perspective where Philadelphia kind of is, what we're talking about. They're one dropped pass away from being 3-0. They're one dropped pass away from being 3-0 in a league right now where people can't find ways to win games. And they should have found a way to win that Atlanta game. I'm not taking that off the plate. You got to catch the damn ball. But they're one catch away from being 3-0 in this league, in a league that is filled with teams that we just can't figure out right now.
And again, it goes back to the coaching point. I think that you are seeing in places like Chicago, places like Cincinnati, we are starting in Jacksonville too. You are starting to have questions about the coaching staffs in those cities.
Mike, you can say Burrow dresses like a clown, but you can't say he's playing bad. I didn't say he's playing bad. I'm just wondering if his commitment to his roster and his team, I don't think he played bad against Washington. There's something vibe-wise about that team that doesn't seem to be clicking. It feels like there's a lot more worrying about, what did Antonio Pierce say? Business decisions?
Business decisions.
Yeah, it feels like Cincinnati's making more business decisions. I'm not questioning his play. I think Burrow's still one of the better players, but I just don't know that
there's a little more individuality than you want to see.
Right. I don't know that 53 are lock, step, and barrel.
No, they're not. I mean, there was a situation. I mean, this is 2 straight weeks now that Burrow has chucked his helmet on the sideline now, is he chucking his helmet because he played bad, because the guy ran the wrong route? We don't know all the details, but there's obviously physical frustration being showcased by Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, the head coach, Zach Taylor. There's something going on there.
609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. As ugly as Joey Boy's Slim Shady look was, reactions like yours, Mike, makes me like it. David in Vineland. Hey, David, you are entitled to look to like any outfit or style that you deem worthy. It's certainly not a look that I'm going for. And listen, and it's not even a bad look. You might say it's a really, really good look. I'm just saying it's one of those things where it appears that he went out of his way to spend a ridiculous amount of money on something that he wasn't doing a year or two ago. That's all. It's just a drastic change. And to me, the drastic change is more a sign. So whether you like the style of it or not, that's on you, Dave. To me, it's the drasticness of the change of look is kind of saying, you get a kid, he was a normal little guy, then all of a sudden out of right field, he decides he's a goth. That's such a drastic change.
Yeah.
And you're like, what happened to you, dude? Not that, if you want to be goth, go for it. I'm all for you, buddy. Have your look. But if you weren't always that look,
correct,
why did you make that change?
Right. Why did you make a drastic change in your aesthetic?
Right. Exactly. Are you that bored with your life? Do you have so much money you're bored with it? Yeah, that's all. So, Dave, if you like that look, good for you. Can you buy that outfit anywhere around here?
I'm sure someone could figure out how to get their hands on it.
Matt in Sicklerville, any way we could swindle a decent draft pick from Miami for Pickett? It's a fair question, Matt. What's a decent draft choice? 3rd, 4th?
2nd?
I don't know about that. For Pickett, you gave up a 3rd to get him.
He was a first-round pick, though.
He was, undeservingly.
Do you call Miami at 11:30 at night, try to get them while they're maybe a little wasted, and say, hey, can we manipulate you into something?
That's your chance. Is you're hoping that you catch them on a night at the hotel.
At the hotel
you don't
bar.
play the Dolphins this year, though. So when are you getting at the bar with them?
I'm just saying, get a phone call. FaceTime.
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. I think that as Miami evaluates their quarterback. Now, you almost have to cheer for Miami a little bit to stay involved and have their offense struggle and have them realize, Look, there are options, though. They got Russell Wilson is going to be a name that I think you're going to hear on the trade.
Ryan Tannehill is still
He's a free agent, so if you don't want to give up anything of value, you just sign a guy like Tannehill.
Joe Flacco's a backup in Indy.
Flacco's a backup. Andy Dalton is a backup.
Maybe Andy Dalton's
not a backup. He's a starter right now, but if somebody offered Carolina, I think Carolina might be dumb enough to say, even though this guy's starting for us right now, we'll give up on him just because we don't really, you could call for Bryce Young if anybody else thinks that he can play. Like if Mike McDaniels thinks, hey, if I get my hands on this guy, I could do something with him.
I do think that there are teams that would look at Bryce Young and say, give me a chance at him. Let me see what I can do. I mean, look at
like
Malik
Trey
Willis
Lance.
with Green Bay.
Trey Lance, not that he's playing, but somebody said, hey, we'll take him for cheap.
Well, I was
Will they
thinking
give a 7th-round pick?
Yeah, they gave a 7th-round pick. I'm thinking about Malik Willis, though. Look what happened. I mean, he looked like he was DOA in Tennessee. He goes to Green Bay. It looks like a competent quarterback.
Well, to be fair, they didn't let him throw all that much.
But what he is throwing, he's not throwing interceptions. He's not throwing, balls in the dirt.
Yeah, the first week, I mean, I don't even think he threw 20 passes in the game.
No, I have to look it up again, but I thought he threw like 16.
Right, so I don't think Malik Willis, but listen, he fell to the third. There were some people who thought he should have been a first-round pick.
Correct.
And he got to the 3rd round. And for Tampa, that's the whole thing is you go to certain situations, and those situations are just not great. Malik Willis last week threw 19 passes. So again, on the flip side, Will Levis threw 34 passes. Not conducive for victory, asking Will Levis to throw 34 times. Green Bay, smart enough to say, Malik Willis, not great. 19 passes that really make sense. And he has, done a good job of, and by the way, Green Bay, 2-1. They won both games without Love. How about that? That should put them in the Fine Five because they're going to get Love back, and that should keep them in the mix. More Sports Bash coming up.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
3:53 Sports Bash this hour is brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, installation for generations. Call 609-390-3907. Online, broadlees.net. I like this text message. Kind of sums it up, right? He says, where did it go? Where did this text message go? I just had it up there. What happened to this one? Oh, here we go. Sam Darnold leads the NFL in touchdown passes. Fields and the Steelers are 3-0. Caleb Williams had the most passing yards, and Dalton had 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards. The 2024 season is already officially drunk.
It's something.
Yeah. I can't explain. What I can't explain is every week we watch the weirdness and the wildness and the craziness and all of it unfold, and yet we question things and can't believe things and don't understand things. No, the only thing we can understand is these teams are so close. The best team to the worst team. There's not that big of a gap in talent. Most of it is quarterback play. One team's better than the others because their quarterback is just like the Chiefs roster isn't so significantly better than everybody else. Their quarterback is so significantly better than everybody else.
Sure.
And everybody else's quarterback, you might have a couple guys who are better, but man, the league is just so filled with parity. But we all think that there's like 10 really good teams and 20 really bad teams. Really, you just got a bunch of teams that are all just in the middle there. And that's the 2024 season. That's football as we know it in today's NFL. Football at 4. It's coming up.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. The fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here as we take a look at the Eagles, Buccaneers. A lot of injury stuff to go over and the potential of the Eagles missing some really key guys on Sunday down in Tampa, a place that they have not fared very well in recent times. We'll get into that and more right now with Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms and their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Jeff Mosher is with us now on the Sports Bash. What's up, Mosh?
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing A-OK, man. You got the Eagles 2-1, and we were just talking about before you came on, the league. I can't find the 5 best teams in this league. I can't come up with 5.
The 5 best teams in this league. Well, certainly the 3-0 teams, right, are not ones that you thought would be among the top 5, like the Steelers and the Vikings, and there's another 3-0 team that's probably Seattle, right? Yeah, who saw that coming, right? And then you've got the 49ers, the Lions that a lot of people like, and they're reeling a little bit. Obviously, the Chiefs, they're smooth sailing. It's the Chiefs and everybody else, Mike. That's how it's been.
Do we even think the Chiefs are that far and away above everyone other than the fact that they have Patrick Mahomes? Because the way they're winning games, we're watching them and saying, are they overly impressive?
No, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, their passing game is still not as prolific as you thought it would be. Travis Kelce is starting to disappear in the offense. They had a couple of left tackle issues. So you're right. But that's, they're the Chiefs and they figure out a way and they get a very beneficial call against the Falcons and wind up winning the game. But yeah, I kind of like the fact that right now the whole NFL is sort of in you're in a wait and see. And some of the traditional powers like the Ravens, right, are not, and then the Niners are looking a little shaky at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the Niners are injury related. They've got so many problems there. The Ravens is a little bit of a surprising one. But
how about the Bengals too? I think a lot of people thought this would be the Bengals back this year, But
Bengals, I definitely put them in that category of disappointing. There's so many teams that you're just like, I can't figure them out. But what have we figured out in your mind about Philadelphia? Is this a hard team to try to figure out with all these injuries?
Yeah, they were a tough team to figure out before the injuries. The injuries just made it even tougher for them. Adam and I were not joking, but we were talking about this upcoming matchup against the Bucs, who have a lot of injuries right now on defense. Vita Vea hurt, Antoine Winfield hurt, somebody else who I'm not thinking of hurt on their defense. And yet the Eagles, all their injuries are on offense. So it's not like you can kind of attack their injury-related weaknesses because the Eagles right now don't know who's going to be available to them offensively to be able to attack those weaknesses.
Yeah, let's look at some of the injuries and kind of get your thoughts, Moshe, on how important they are and how much they can overcome them. Obviously, Lane Johnson, and he did not practice today. You've also got Mekhi Becton, who was back at practice today. Mailata sat out practice today. We don't know what his the injury report should be coming out any minute here. But those guys, Lane Johnson, we would think most likely not going to play this week.
You never rule anything out, but Lane has a history with concussions. He was throwing up. It is tougher now than ever before for players to get in because of the protocol changes to get back into a game. It was rare to begin with that a player who suffered a concussion in a Sunday game was going to be able to make it back for the following Sunday's game. It had happened a couple of times, but it was rare by percentages, but now it's even tougher. So I have a hard time, never rule anything out, but I have a hard time thinking that Lane's going to be available in that game.
Yeah, and that would be what? Fred Johnson, I guess, would be the replacement. I guess what happens if Mailata and Lane Johnson were out?
So if Mailata and Lane Johnson are out, so you mean in the middle of a game? Because if both are out, they do have Darian Kennard, who hasn't been active, but if both those guys got hurt in practice, they would activate Kennard and Fred would probably play left tackle and Kennard would probably play right tackle.
They wouldn't use Becton or Steen even at one of those tackle spots?
Steen maybe in an emergency. I don't know about Becton because if he's healthy, you want him at right guard where he's been playing it. They don't like to move a guy who's healthy to another spot and then change 2 different positions if they can avoid it.
Jeff, the potential of them having to play a game without AJ and Devontae, that is becoming more realistic. So, in your mind, what does an offense without those two guys look like?
Well, it's an offense that's going to have to lean, once again, heavily on Dallas Goedert. But now you don't have Devontae Smiths that sort of also make the defense wonder where you're going. So it's an offense that, A, would have to lean heavily on Dallas Goedert. B, because of just depth issues in general at receiver, you're probably going to have to play a lot more 12 personnel. So not
Looks like we lost Moshe for a second here. We'll get him back here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. Yes, we did lose you for a second there, and you're kind of, it looks like you're back. All right. So 12 personnel is where we kind of lost you.
And then running the ball more, I was getting into. I mean, you probably should have ran the ball a little bit more against the Saints, to be honest with you.
You worried about Barkley's workload at all?
Of course. But at this point, you really don't have much of a choice. You know, I'd like to say that this would be the game where you can get Jahan Dotson more involved, but you just haven't seen enough evidence yet of Jahan Dotson being a guy who's going to do something in this offense. So to me, it's 12 personnel, it's 13 personnel, is running the ball more and trying to get the ball to Goddard the best you can.
Yeah, because those guys, Smith and Brown, I mean, I would imagine Brown is not going to play because you have the bye next week. Don't take the chance. Let him sit out.
But I don't know about that.
Right, but with Smith being out. Yeah, because with Smith being out, I would imagine, because Smith was not at practice today, I would imagine it's going to be tough for Smith to play.
Yeah, I think it'll be really tough to play. And I don't, we'll have to see. Was A.J. Brown was not at practice today, correct? Or was he limited? I don't think the injury report is out yet.
They did not make a designation on his status, but I don't think he was there.
Well, and that's interesting because they didn't even practice today. They had a walkthrough. So that's really just an estimation of if you were supposed to practice. So obviously, if he was not at the walkthrough and he wouldn't have projected to be the practice, it's going to be a rough go to get him back for the game.
Oh, no doubt about it. And listen, as you mentioned, Dotson, you brought him in here to be the third guy, kind of a slot guy. And we talked about it all training camp. If you lost Brown and Smith, by the way, they were not there and warming up before the walkthroughs. Brown, Smith, Lane Johnson, they were all out. Today they did not practice at all. So, that would be the one spot that if you lost those two guys for a game or extended, you were in some big trouble. They just don't have outside guys to really replace the current players that they have, and having them both hurt at the same time makes it even that more difficult. So, as you said, maybe you lean on Saquon Barkley more. Dotson would be a guy that you're hoping for, but is this a game plan that they can draw up? Is this a good matchup to get Goddard involved?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a good game plan because Todd Bowles typically likes to blitz a lot.
Yep.
So you will have some one-on-ones, but even it's not like Todd Bowles just blitzes, right? He has very smart blitzes. He has droppers. He has disguised blitzes. So it's not hard to put a guy or two in Dallas Goedert's direction and still send a 5 or a 6-man rush. That's why I say it can't just be all Dallas Goedert all the time. If that were the case, then, I'm trying to give any team that just has a good tight end and no weapons would be better. But it's hard. It's hard to do that when you've got a really good pass catching tight end and no real other threats in your receiving core.
Yeah, they've had some problems with the blitz against Todd Bowles teams. When you look at this offense with the lack of weapons, is this one of those weeks where it's even a worse matchup with Bowles in the blitz?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, honestly, Jalen Hurts is really good against the blitz. Now, granted, he's good because he also has some really good weapons. But obviously, when teams blitz in many situations, you have one-on-one matchups, and if you just have some decent receivers who can win one-on-ones, you can move the ball. So, but Todd's really good at also blitzing with zone coverage, so that makes it a little bit tougher. And yes, you're right. The Eagles, like many quarterbacks and many offenses, have struggled against his defenses. He's one of the best in the league. I was joking with Kaplan because they just played the Broncos last week, and they lost, but I don't know if there are two coaches who blitz more than Todd Bowles and the Broncos defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph. I'm wondering if there were any 4-man rushes in that game. It must have been just a complete blitz fest.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not. So, yes, it can be easier if you get those one-on-ones, but you need the one-on-ones to win.
You sure do. And listen, it's going to be very interesting to see what their pass game looks like without those two guys if they do not play this week. Conversely, you got Evans and Godwin, those two guys, very good. Baker Mayfield. But last week, I mean, they were terrible at home against Denver. So it's so hard to get a read on some of these teams. But the Eagles' secondary matchup is probably going to be the big highlight up against those receivers this week. Can they get Rush with the 4-man against this offensive line?
Well, they're going to probably need more than just one guy getting to the quarterback. I mean, they were able to survive last week on just Jalen Carter really getting to the quarterback. I'm sure the Bucs have watched the tape, and they saw that Vic Fangio figured out some interesting ways to make sure that Jalen Carter was single blocked on a lot of runs and passes, and I'm sure that the Bucs will counter and figure out a way to especially maybe they'll let it go for a couple of series first and see how he's playing and then go to that.
Well, so these two teams played in January and Philadelphia went down there and got lambasted basically. Game was never really competitive. What is different about these two teams that would say, look, Philadelphia's a favorite on the road in this game? Are you surprised by that?
I am. I'm really surprised, especially given the injuries that the Eagles have.
And I don't know if that's changed. It opened up at, I think Philadelphia was favored by 2.5 when it opened.
Yeah, that's what I just looked at it today, and I think that's what it said. So, I'm a little surprised. It might change significantly throughout the week as more injury information comes out.
It's 2 now. Yeah, it's 2.
2? Yeah, see, it's already starting to drop a little bit.
2
yeah,
and the over-under is 44, so it still feels like they think the Eagles' offense is, like normal here.
Yeah, I guess. 44 is one of those weird numbers, like 22 or 23 to 21. Is that a high-scoring game anymore? Who knows? But it does seem like the way the Eagles have played games that's kind of a high total, and also the way Tampa has played games. Now Tampa has their weapons healthy. If you remember last year, Mike Evans dropped like 5 passes in that game. That game was closer than the score looked. It was 25-11, but the Eagles offense did not necessarily perform really well. Jalen threw 2 picks. DeAndre Swift ran the ball really well, but they got a safety. They only scored 23 total points, and again, the Bucs dropped a lot of passes in that game. It was a very odd game.
That game opened, by the way, at 47. It's now dropped down to 44. So I guess you are starting to see the remnants, if you will, of no Smith and possibly no A.J. Brown. We'll see what Smith's availability. I don't have a lot of hope for him. Brown, maybe with the hamstring, maybe as a decoy or tries to give it a go. We'll see. Could see Dotson. Who's the next guy? Campbell?
Paris Campbell. He would be the next guy.
Johnny Wilson. John Ross got elevated to the practice squad too, right?
Well, he got signed to the practice squad, yes. Brought back to it. But, I don't think that you'll be seeing John Ross in this weekend's game or elevated for this game.
Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast on all podcasting platforms and check out their YouTube channel. Subscribe to that for more Inside the Birds content. They're getting you ready for the Eagles and the Buccaneers as we are this week on Football at 4. Thanks, Moshe.
All right. Have a great one, Mike.
And Football at 4 is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Coming up, we'll talk to Greeny. We'll get Mike Greenberg's take on where this Eagles team is through 3 weeks of the season. We'll get his thoughts on the NFL in general. What is he seeing about a league? Is it changing before our very eyes? Of course, you see Greeny every Sunday on NFL Countdown. He's also got a new book out. He's going to tell you more about that coming up next.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
I'm that guy, and he's that guy. Weekday mornings 10 to 12. Greeny, get up. NFL Countdown, the NFL Draft, and now, for a second time, got this text message when I got to work today, Josh. Says, looking forward to the Greeny interview. I'm excited for his new book. On the way to me right now. Got Your Number was such a great book. My grandfather and I like to pick a random number and learn something new each time. It's great being able to hear stories about some of the athletes. Please send Greeny a thanks from me, a fan, David in Vineland. Well, David in Vineland, I'm telling Greeny now that you appreciate that book and his new book, Got Your Answers. The 100 Greatest Sports Arguments are settled. It came out yesterday. It's on Amazon. And, man, Greeny, sports arguments in Philly. You could write a book about sports arguments in the city of Philadelphia and make a mint. How are you?
We probably could. I'm good. David in Vineland, thank you very much for the kind words. I appreciate it, and it is nice to be on with you again. And we are thrilled to be back with this book. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know the 100 greatest sports arguments settled. One argument here that has gone on for days is Nick Sirianni going for it on fourth down, not 1 week, but 2 weeks in a row. Where should NFL Eagles fans sit on that argument?
He's ice cold, right? I mean, there's no other way to put it. Sometimes coaches get hot, and in this case, he is the opposite of hot. He is as ice cold as a coach could possibly be on those decisions. That said, here was my take on this earlier this week on TV. Nick Sirianni does not do himself any favors when he talks to the media because he's not good at it. He's not a very good communicator, or at least not in that way. As I sometimes say, he doesn't say words very well. However, I think this past week was a monster win and performance and almost vote of confidence for Nick Sirianni. Whatever the in-game stuff was or wasn't, and I thought he got the end of the Atlanta game completely wrong and obviously the end of the first half of this game wrong and whatever else. This was a team that I think, at least from the national perspective, after the way they just completely came unraveled last year, I think after the way they lost that game to Atlanta, there were a lot of people, myself included, watching to see if they would come together and rise up and play tough. And that was a bad matchup for their defense, or at least it looked like it would be. They were getting no pressure on the quarterback, and Derek Carr leading into that game had been the least pressured quarterback in the league. And that team didn't allow a touchdown until the fourth quarter. The defense played great. I thought that was a real... let's put it this way, if they'd gotten obliterated in that game, we would have said this team has quit on Sirianni. So for them to fight the way they very obviously fought and to find a way at the end the way they did, I think it would be unfair not to say the opposite, not to say that, at least for this day, it seemed like they came together and rallied around their embattled coach. So it doesn't mean that he's not going to remain embattled, but I think generally speaking, I think the division sets up very well for them. I think Dallas stinks. I don't think Washington is that good, and I don't think the Giants are that good. So I think that the Eagles have a little bit of a cushion to work with, and I think that all things considered, we'd have to say last week was a very good week for Coach Sirianni.
So Get Up, NFL Countdown, Greeny on the radio, and obviously many other things you have had in your time. Where do you think, you got coaches, former players. We've had former players, we asked them, they love when the coach is aggressive. Then you got former coaches. You can't do that. Is this just one of those things that there is no right answer in today's game? Because it's so interesting, Greeny, that Atlanta won the game against Philadelphia in part because Philly couldn't convert on fourth down. What did Atlanta do the very next week? They tried to go for it on fourth down. They left 6 points on the board. They lost by 5. Is the game changing, and do the players like the fact that these coaches allow them and put the trust in them?
I think so. Those are two separate questions. I think the offensive players always want to go for it. The answer to your question, is there a right or wrong way, is yes, at least to some degree. There are analytics that tell you, historically speaking, if your chances of success in this case are 58% and your chances of success in this case are 51%, and logic suggests you should take the 58 every time. However, all of those come down to, if you played this scenario out 1,000 times, here's how often it would work one way, here's how often it works the other. And each individual game is sort of like its own individual lifetime. So a good coach, I think, has to have a feel for how the game is going, how the unit, whether it's his offense or defense or his quarterback or whatever the case is functioning. There are a lot of factors that I think skew the analytics. But when in doubt, and one of the reasons I think coaches are prone to use analytics is because if something goes wrong, they always have that to fall back on. They can always say the numbers. Hey, if you get second guessed, you make a decision that the analytics defend, and it doesn't work, and if you get second guessed in the press conference, you can always say, "Excuse me, you idiot, but the numbers tell me that the way I did it gave me a 61% chance of winning, and the other way would have been 41%." And I think a lot of coaches do that for that reason, because I think a lot of coaches they coach with at least one eye on not getting fired. And so it isn't as simple as you just do what the analytics dictate. But there are, of course, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, there are analytics that do give you at least an indication of which way one should lean. And if you were to do it 1,000 times, you should do it that way. I always use the blackjack analogy. You know, if you have 18 and the dealer has 6, you can hit. And every once in a while you'll win. But that doesn't mean you did the right thing.
Right.
So, and this is probably a particularly good analogy in Atlantic City.
Right.
So that's what I would say. I think more often than not, coaches do and should fall back on the analytics because more often than not, they're going to be right.
Well, and they're aided by the fact that Monday Night Football is also putting the analytics big green go on the screen on fourth downs. You know, hey, they're telling you to go for it now. That's helping some of these coaches out. Hasn't out Sirianni out, but the team is still 2-1. But Greeny, the league seems drunk. It seems like it's crazy. You got 3-0 teams that no one believes in. You got 0-3 teams that people want to believe in. You've got 1-2 teams that are in the mix. You got 2-1 teams that no one knows anything about. This is football in 2024.
Yeah, and God bless it. I mean, it is just endlessly fascinating. Look, to me, the overriding storyline or the through line of all the things you just said is that with the way the league is structured right now, there has never been a greater premium on elite coaching. And look what Matt LaFleur is doing in Green Bay with Malik Willis. Look at what Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores are doing in Minnesota with that defense and with Sam Darnold. Look at what Clint Kubiak, this past week notwithstanding, has done to an offense that barely changed personnel in New Orleans. The value of great coaching. Look what the Steelers have done with Justin Fields. I think the thread of commonality amongst all the teams in the NFL is that look at the coach, look at the coaching, and far more often than not, sort of like analytics, then you're going to find out how good the team is. Of course, the players are the most important thing. No coach is going to win with bad players. But I think the difference between the most talented team in the league and the least talented team in the league is so narrow, more so than it's ever been before, that I think that there has never been a time in any sport where coaching was more valuable than it is in the NFL right this minute.
Greeny is, of course, 10 to noon right here on 97.3 ESPN. Get up, 8 o'clock in the morning on ESPN. And, of course, NFL Countdown. You can check them out Sunday mornings. The book has got your answers. The 100 Great Sports Arguments Settled. By the way, Colin LBI is a big Jets fan. He says, Greeny is on. Forget the Eagles talk. Let's go, Jets. We do have a couple Jets people at the top half of our signal up there in Long Beach Island area. But Greeny, your favorite argument that you and Hembo had to settle?
Well, there are so many. So what the book is basically is we identified what we think are the top 100 sports debates, the top things that people love, sports fans on shows like this one love to debate. And then we used Hembo's extraordinary research to settle them once and for all. So you can open to any page, which I just did. I just opened to this page. Who were the top 10 number one overall picks in the common draft era? We took all the sports and put them together. So it is not the number one basketball or football or baseball or hockey, but all of the sports combined. Who was the best player ever to be selected number one overall in the draft in all four of those sports combined? We ranked them 1 through 10. Who would you put at number one?
Gotta go LeBron, right?
LeBron is number one. As I write in the chapter, ultimately LeBron receives the edge for having surpassed Kareem as the all-time leading scorer. It has always been my contention that Abdul-Jabbar was the most accomplished basketball player that ever lived, but I can no longer defend that position. LeBron has earned his place atop the entire history of the sport. We have Kareem 2. We have Mario Lemieux 3. We have Magic Johnson 4, Alex Ovechkin 5, A-Rod 6, and that was a tough one because if it wasn't for the cheating, it would have been higher. Peyton Manning 7, Ken Griffey Jr. 8, John Elway 9, and Guy Lafleur 10. So that's not my favorite. That's literally just the one I opened it to. And there are the arguments debate from everything from what are the top 10 best pitches in baseball history. I'm literally just opening to a page. What are the top 10 signature moves in basketball history? Who are the top 10 shooters in basketball history? And it just goes on. We have 100 of them. There are 100 sneaky Hembo questions to accompany each of them. And the other thing that I would mention about it is the book we did a year and a half ago, one of the things people told us was it was really expensive, which it was. We didn't have control over how much the publisher charged for it, but it was more than we wanted. So this time we insisted that the book be $15. So the book is $14.95. They're actually doing a special price on it right now on Amazon. So if you order it on Amazon right now, it is called Got Your Answers. You will get 10% off the already low price, which we asked for, of $14.95. So I couldn't be more thrilled with some of the reaction that I'm starting to see already. The book just came out yesterday. And if you have any thoughts on it, if you have any debate you want to engage in over some of the topics, please tweet at me using the hashtag #GotYourAnswers. Ask a question, make a declarative statement, and Hembo and I will be writing back to as many as we can.
Well, we appreciate it. Got Your Answers. Yes, I'm on the Amazon. It's $13.49 for the hardcover, $9.99 on the Kindle. People are asking on the text board, is there an audio version? Do you know that yet?
There is not yet. No, there probably will be, but there is not yet.
All right.
By the way, an audio version of Got Your Number from last year, which we read. We have not done an audio version for this one yet.
We do have we appreciate it. I know you got to run. We got a ton of people texting in, really enjoying the conversation. Go check out the book. Bring it to the beach. It's a great time to sit on the beach, September, October at the Jersey Shore. Mike Greenberg, weekday mornings at 10 right here on 97.3 ESPN. Wake up with him on Get Up. And Sunday, check him out on NFL Countdown, the NFL Draft, the new podcast with Mel is fantastic. Greeny, always appreciate it, man.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, Mike Greenberg, everybody here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Thank you, Jerry and Brigantine. I see your text messages, Colin LBI. I got a lot of texts coming in responding to the Greeny conversation. Big Al and Vineland, appreciate you. 609-403-0973. Real quick, the book excerpt has a couple different things I'm going to ask you guys out there. What is the most coveted trophy in all of sports? What do you think the answer? What would your answer be?
My answer for the most coveted trophy in all of sports.
Yep.
I would say the Masters jacket.
Really?
Because I think golf is one of the hardest sports to play. And to me, the two hardest sports to play are baseball and golf. And if you can win an elusive jacket on that weekend, I mean, you are among such a small group of people.
I would probably go the Stanley Cup. Why? I just think the history of the Cup, the passion the players have, the journey to get there, all of it it's the most grueling, and just the Cup itself. Like just the hoisting of the cup, the traditions of winning it, of getting a day with it, having everybody's name engraved in it. You know, that's something different than the Super Bowl trophy. Your name's not engraved in that. The Larry O'Brien, nobody really even knows what that thing looks like. The World Series thing. The Stanley Cup is something that is totally unique in sports.
Listen, I love hockey, but for me, there's a lot of dudes' names than that Stanley Cup trophy. And my problem is, if I want to be among an elusive group, that Masters jacket is pretty exclusive.
All right, that's one of the questions in there. Who is the most clutch in Game 7? I mean, you can certainly say guys like you're talking about Game 7. Jordan didn't play a lot of Game 7.
He didn't really play Game 7, so you can't really say Jordan. I mean, are we thinking about? I mean, my mind goes to baseball. So, you know, it's like, are we talking about maybe like a Derek Jeter or a Reggie Jackson kind of situation?
Yeah, that would be one where you'd have to kind of sit and think. But I like, you know, because he gave us the one, which was the number 1 overall picks. And, you know, I don't think he had 4 NHLers in there. So that kind of tells you, like, they didn't just go off of their opinions. They went off of Hembo's research and figured out why these players. And I went with LeBron as the greatest number one pick of all time. They agreed.
Now, for you, Mike, was LeBron number one because you were thinking about, like, the business and the sports side?
No, I mean, listen, you could be the biggest LeBron hater in the world. He's the highest, the greatest scorer in the history in terms of points. He's won some championships, not as many as people had hoped for when he got drafted. Now, Jordan wasn't drafted number one overall, so he's not in this conversation. So with the 3 championships, the scoring, and for me, LeBron, he lived up to it. He had more hype than anyone could ever possibly imagine.
Right.
And for the most part, outside of not winning the championship as much as you may have hoped for, he was the greatest player of our era, of the era that we're watching. And so he lived up to the tremendous amount of hype that was bestowed upon him. There are a lot of guys who just can't handle it. He has handled it, surpassed it, dunked on it, and is still going.
I think the key is, are you a number one draft pick? Because as you said, Jordan was not a number one pick. And there's a lot of great players.
This is number one overall, by the way, for the people
number one
out
overall.
there.
So, like, if you go through the list of the greatest players of all time, there's a huge chunk of them who are not number one overall picks. So that's a very important delineation.
609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Some of the other ones that are mentioned in the description is why Rocky, without a doubt, is the best sports movie of all time. Would you agree?
Oh, I know it's sacrilegious, but I can't agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to say it's the best sports movie. You could say it's top 5 or not even.
I mean, I'm willing to give it top 5. But the problem with the Rocky movie is that, you know, when you're talking about greatest sports movies, I mean, you're leaving out so many. I mean, first of all, you could argue baseball has the greatest library of sports movies of all the sports.
Well, that's a different question.
You know, and so you're basically saying the Rocky is better than fill in the blank great baseball movie. That's hard for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I mean, are you a Field of Dreams? Are you an 8-Man Out? Are you
Bull Durham?
I mean, yeah.
For the Love of the Game.
Well, that's why there's
Major League,
the 100
Sandlot.
greatest sports arguments settled. He says why Rocky is without a doubt the best sports movie of all time. I don't know the answer. You're going to have to read the book to get the answer.
Sounds like Hembo might have influenced that answer a little bit.
One of the topics is which ballpark has the most bizarre concessions? Now, how do you come up with that nuanced research?
Unless you went to every ballpark,
unless you looked at each ballpark's menus.
That's possible too. You could have gone through the menus and be like, "What's the most ridiculous thing on here?"
Top 10 individual Super Bowl performances.
I mean, I'm assuming Jerry Rice is that one game that he has got to be on that list.
Do you think that Jerry Rice is on that list? Number 2, by the way. I do have the 10 in front of me.
Oh wow!
Yep.
All right, let's see how much I can either get this. Or
I got a couple excerpts from the book.
Nice.
That I got my hands on.
Well, that Jerry Rice Super Bowl has to be on the list.
It's number 2.
How about the Steve Young Super Bowl? I think he had 5-6 touchdowns.
Steve Young 6 touchdown passes is number 6.
Number 6. Wow, a little lower than I thought. Let's see here. Great individual performances in the Super Bowl. I mean, is Nick Foles on the list?
I actually was wondering if Foles would be on the list. He's not, though.
He's not. A little disappointing. Let's see here. Who else might have been?
All right, I'll try to
Emmitt Smith game.
I'll try to drop a couple hints here. Okay. All right. So let's see. Number. There we go. Sorry. Number 2, Jerry Rice. Number 6 was Steve Young.
Mm-hmm.
This guy had, this one's, you're not going to get some of these. I mean, all right, one guy, his career got cut a little short. He was a running back. Terrell Davis, 157 yards, 3 touchdowns. There was another running back. just 166 rush yards. I don't know how that's the fourth best performance in Super Bowl history.
I mean, is it because he had a bunch of touchdowns?
No touchdowns, just 166 rushes.
Just randomly 166.
That's what it says.
Is it Marcus Allen?
John Riggins.
John Riggins.
Yep.
Oh, the 82. Okay.
But, okay, if you were to ask me.
He had that one big famous run.
L.C. Greenwood is number 5.
I would have never guessed that.
He sacked Roger Staubach 4 times. If you told me the guy had 4 sacks in one game, wouldn't you think that would be higher on the list than John Riggins getting 166 yards?
I would have put it higher, and I would have thought it was Lawrence Taylor and not L.C. Greenwood.
Number 7, Phil Simms, 22 of 25.
Oh, the almost perfect game.
Still 22 of 25.
It's amazing.
It's good. It's really, really, really good. But
you're not impressed.
One of the 10 best performances of all time?
I think that's impressive.
What else did he do? Any touchdowns?
I'm sure he had touchdowns.
Just 22 of 25. I'm sure I could go through NFL quarterback in the Super Bowl history and find a better game than 22 of 25.
You think so?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Is that your next goal?
Mike Vrabel, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and a touchdown.
Who was it?
Mike Vrabel.
What was that Super Bowl? Was that the
one of the New England ones?
Well, it had to be one of the first 3, so I'm thinking, was that the Panthers one, maybe?
All right. Desmond Howard, 244 return yards and a 99-yard touchdown.
Packers, yep. He was Super Bowl MVP.
And the last one, 9 catches, 131 yards.
Is that Terrell Owens?
No. And a game-winning touchdown catch.
Oh. I jumped the shark there.
Santonio Holmes.
Really?
Yeah. Well, 9 for 131. Okay. And the game-winning touchdown pass. That's a big game. Phil Simms, 22 of 25. I got to check that out. What else did he do in that game? Was he just very accurate, or did he have a couple touchdown passes?
I'm assuming he had a couple touchdown passes.
I think it would have said that.
Or maybe because of the excerpt, you don't have all the details.
No, because all these other ones are giving me
information.
Well, they're saying, like, for instance, Jerry Rice, 215 yards, touchdown. Terrell Davis, 157, 3 touchdowns. By the way, didn't get the number 1 of all time.
What's number 1?
Tom Brady, 28-3 comeback.
Oh, against the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
That deserved to be on the list.
Yep, it's number 1. You said it deserves to be on the list. They're saying it's number 1. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Dan and EHC, Super Bowl's the ultimate trophy. Football is head and shoulders above the rest in popularity. Yeah, it's not about what's more popular. It's the most coveted. The Super Bowl trophy is, it's like, it's got its thing. You know what it looks like. But the Stanley Cup trophy is the most recognizable, unique one in all of sport.
Phil Simms had 3 touchdown passes in that game.
Okay, now that changes the dynamics. I don't know why they wouldn't have said that.
I don't know why either.
Because that's pretty key to the conversation.
I feel like Hembo dropped the ball there.
Well, the book just didn't list it in there. I don't know who who left out those facts.
I'm assuming because Hembo is such a stickler for details, he would have perused this book.
David says rewatch Rocky, Josh. It must be a while.
See, I actually like Rocky 2, 3, and 4 better than Rocky 1. So maybe I'm just weird.
Yeah, you are. I think 1 is the better movie.
Really?
Yeah, no doubt.
You enjoy him losing?
That's the whole story. That's what makes the Rocky movies what they are, is he loses, but he gains so much respect for his loss, and he doesn't even care that he loses, that he loses. That's the whole story of Rocky.
See, I love seeing him triumph.
He got knocked down, and he got back up. That's what created Rocky, is the fact that he got knocked down and came back and fought, and in Rocky 2, he ends up winning. But the story starts with him not giving up. That's the whole premise of the character, Rocky.
I understand what the premise of the character is. I'm just saying that I like his triumph more than his letdown.
Yeah, but it's not even a letdown. It's that he fought his heart out. He gave it his best, and even though he didn't win, he gained the respect. And that is the story. Is you don't have to win to gain respect all the time. You can.
That's
you
true.
Can. You know what I'm saying? So
I'll give you that.
That's the story.
I just like 2, 3, and 4 better.
Yeah, 3 definitely no good.
You're not a Clubber Lang guy.
Nah, that one was Bush weak. 4, it was all right.
Come on. How can you be an American and not love number 4?
It was just so far-fetched. I mean,
You thought that was far-fetched?
Yeah, you got far-fetched, a guy dying in the ring. I'm sorry, that's a little far-fetched.
That's not far-fetched.
I know it's happened before, but in the way that it happened, at least that was just a little, with the exhibition nature of it and all that stuff. I mean, having what's his name singing up on with the top hat on, James Brown. Yeah, a little bit of it,
You thought that was too embellished?
Yeah, I just never was a big four guy.
So I don't like 5. 5's the one that I don't like the most.
I kind of like 5. I know it's what's his name, Tommy Gunn.
Yeah.
What else we got here? Yeah, Rocky 4 is my favorite, but 1 is the best. Okay, yeah. Everybody's got their favorite there, but Greeny says Rocky is the number 1. You check out the book. It's called Got Your Answers, the 100 Greatest Sports Arguments Settled. It's out now. It's on Amazon. There's a 10% discount for our listeners if you go there right now. Check it out. All right. Coming up, more Sports Bash on the way. Greeny here on the Bash. We appreciate him jumping on board. And coming up next hour at 5 o'clock, since the Nuggets got bumped by Greeny today, the Nuggets are moving to 5 o'clock. Nick Earnshaw's got Nick's Nuggets coming up in 14 minutes.
You're listening to the...
This country was built on a distinctly American work ethic. But today, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, sending away good jobs and diminishing our capability to make things. American Giant is pushing back against that tide. They make the kind of high-quality clothing staples you need for a comfortable, stylish, and active summer wardrobe. Like vintage-style tees, tough tank tops, breathable polos, lightweight sweatshirts, shorts, and so much more. All made right here in the USA. From growing the cotton to adding the final touches. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs for seamsters, cutters, and factory workers in towns and cities across the United States. And it's about more than an income. Jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. Support America's workers and get 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, code STAPLE20.
With Mike Gill.
And it just keeps getting better.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Que corazón, mi corazón.
451 Sports Bash. Tonight you got Mets and Braves on 97.3 ESPN. Braves won that game 5-1 last night. From what I gather, the Braves now and the Mets. This is a huge game tonight. You look at what this game means for the wild card standings. It is getting really interesting. It's going to come down. I think it's going to literally come down. It's wild where this thing is. Let's take a look at the wild card standings, if you will, and figure out where the final weekend will be. You've got the Mets have the tougher road here. So they really, really, really have to try to get this game tonight against the Braves. You can listen to it on 97.3 ESPN. But the wild card standings in the National League, San Diego's up 4.5 games. They've already clinched. The Mets are a half game up on Arizona, and Atlanta's a half game behind them. If Atlanta wins tonight, both teams will be 87 and 71 with the weekend to go. Arizona is 87 and 71. So this is going to be an epic finish between 3 teams for 2 spots in the National League. On the American League side, Kansas City, Detroit are tied for the last wild card spot with Minnesota, Seattle, 2 games back. It's going to be a great finish this weekend. The baseball playoffs are all right here on 97.3 ESPN. Red October is back. Phillies playoff baseball. You can listen to it on 97.3 ESPN and the wild card round of the playoffs. It all starts tonight with the Braves and the Mets. Listen to it on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
5 o'clock, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Driving you home, if you're watching the show on the X platform and YouTube at Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SB Live. Nick Earnshaw is the host of Nick's Nuggets. Normally you hear him at 4:30, but Greeny bumped him today. So he is bumped to 5 o'clock with another edition of Nick's Nuggets. You can check out his podcast. It's called The Shift. It's the final week of the baseball season. Probably a lot of good stuff there. But he joins us now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. A 5 o'clock drive home edition of Nick's Nuggets here on this Wednesday edition. What's going on, Nick?
What's going on, Mike? I don't mind getting bumped by Greeny. That's fine. That's good. I'm honored to get bumped by Greeny today. That's pretty cool. We got to have him on today, talk about his new book. I can't wait to read that new book, by the way. There's a lot of cool stuff in there.
Yep, the best arguments, 100. Always love a sports debate, sports argument, and then that's what usually the Nuggets bring here. A lot of arguments.
Oh, yeah, that's what the Nuggets are for, right? And, we got to start with nugget number one, and we got to go to Jeff Passan, okay? He was on Pat McAfee today talking about the Phillies. He thinks the Phillies are the favorite to win the World Series, Mike. He's on board with Nuggets over here because they have stars. And, I know last year we've talked about it ad nauseum that they fell apart in the NLCS, could not get it rolling offensively. But I'm with Passan on here. A lot of people are liking the Phillies to go deep in the playoff run. They have the 2 years of experience. They've been there, done that. They won the division this year. Hopefully they could stay out of that wild card round and it could go into the World Series, right? Like you're starting a series later now. Maybe not worrying about the wild card. Hopefully it stays that way. But he has them as the favorite. I'm with Passan on this. I think they are the team to beat heading into this postseason. I know you want to bring up the Dodgers, but the Phillies, I think, are the most talented. Let's see if they can go the furthest.
They've been the most talented team last year. They didn't win. So they got to overcome the fact that sometimes being the most talented is not still the best. Listen, I want them to be the best. I want them to be the team at the end. But right now you're seeing a lot of reasons why other teams are playing better baseball right now. The Padres have won 9 out of their last 10. In fact, last night I said, the Dodgers did you a favor by losing. The problem was they lost to the Padres, and the Padres are now nipping on your heels. So if you have another night like you did last night where you can't get anybody out because you threw 3 donkeys out there, you're going to be in some trouble this weekend where these games still matter, and the Padres are putting the pressure on you. Hey, look, the last thing you want is 1 year you went to the World Series, you regress to losing in the National League Championship Series. You don't want to regress to the next way back and losing the division series. That would be an ultimate disappointment. But this field of National League contenders, I think it's as deep as it's been in recent memory.
Yeah, it's a good crop. I still think the Phillies are the best. Though, listen, yesterday that flushed that one. That game didn't matter. It was the hangover game. I know a lot of the starters were playing. That was essentially a scheduled loss, Mike. That was a scheduled loss for the Phillies yesterday. I did not expect them to come out and perform after celebrating the East Division Championship the night before.
Well, they did. The Phillies expected to when they wrote the lineup out with all their starters in the line. It's not like they said, "Hey, this is a game where we're going to start everybody." But no, they went with pretty much a normal lineup because listen, they're playing for the number 1 seed. Rob Thompson said it on Monday night. We got bigger things we still have to accomplish. So enjoy this, but we still have things we want to do. So this wasn't them punting a game with the lineup. The problem was it fell on the 5th spot in the rotation, and they just have not been able to figure out an answer to that riddle of what do we do in that spot. Last night, they tried to not start Walker and go with Banks. That backfired. They went with Walker in a horrible situation with the bases loaded. But look, Banks loads the bases up. They got to get him out of the game. Now, I wouldn't have gone to Walker in that spot. I'm not pitching Walker again the rest of the season. But again, we assume that if we would have put Kobe Allard in the game in that spot with the bases loaded, that he gets out of that inning. I don't know that I'm going to make that assumption. So Banks loads the bases up, and Walker comes in and can't get out of the mess. But we're just assuming that Kobe Allard was going to come in and get... Look, all 3 options were bad options. They were awful options on a night where the Phillies had a chance to pass the Dodgers for the number 1 seed. Last night they had a chance to do that. The Dodgers lost, and they lost.
I understand. But yesterday, I didn't expect them to win. Coming off of a night like that, winning the division. It just felt scheduled loss to me. And especially since, you're going with a bullpen game essentially. Walker was going to pitch. I just did not see a win. If you saw a win last night, God bless you, because I didn't see one whatsoever. Coming off the victory after, celebrating the locker room, dancing on my own. We talked about it yesterday. Chief Vibes Officer and Garrett Stubbs, they're partying for a while. They go to Xfinity, a bunch of them after the game. I know they were drinking like crazy, most of them, and they played most of their starters. But it's just one of those games where it's like, all right, the fifth starter is out of it right now. I didn't see them winning that game at all. There's no way anyone could have seen them winning that game last night.
Listen, did I feel good about them winning the game last night with Tanner Banks pitching? Of course not. But guess what? I can't have a scheduled loss in my mind at this stage. July, fine. August, okay. The last week of September, I got to give it a better go than what I gave last night. Okay.
Yeah.
I get the whole thing. They won the division. They're having some fun with it, but that lineup, and listen, you want to win the World Series, you have to be more focused than that. You can't lose focus for one night with 4 games left. Sorry. Not acceptable.
I hear you. I don't think it's acceptable either. I want to see him go out there, get this number 1 seed, not have to worry about the wild card, not have to worry about dropping in the standings with San Diego 2 games back from you. I get it. But the reality checks in, and it's like this team, there's some partiers on this team. I expect it. And when you have Walker, thank goodness, you're done with Walker now for the rest of the season. It's over. You don't have to go through that anymore of the fifth starter game, having Tanner Banks start, Kerkering start games, and Walker coming in for a couple innings. It's over. You're not going to have to worry about Walker in the postseason. You've got 4 starters now heading into the postseason. Walker's done. That aspect of the Phillies with the fifth starter over with now. So you don't have to worry about it. Now, heading into these last couple of games of the season, now you got to lock in, and hopefully you can get that 1 or 2 seed. Rather be the one. You're half game behind the Dodgers right now.
Well, he should have never been in that game to begin with. There's no reason they had to bring him in that game in that spot. So I do kind of put some blame on them for that. I get it. It's probably one of those things where, look, what are we going to do? Banks didn't have it. He walks, the bases loaded. Okay, fine. We could have gone to Allard in that spot. Maybe he wiggles his way out. I don't feel great about that, but he pitched okay last night. He still gave up 4 runs himself. Everybody had the, Walker had the bad inning in which he inherited the runners. After that, he kind of settled in a little bit. Allard had a bad inning, and Banks was terrible. And he had 1 good inning, and they had a bad inning. So the 3 guys you had, all of them had 1 bad inning. So I'm not going to assume that Allard coming in with the bases loaded was going to get out of that mess. That being said, you have to find a way. Look, you're playing the Cubs. It's not a very good team. The Cubs look like they're out of gas. So there is no scheduled loss against the Cubs. You're going to the playoffs. You have number 1 seed on your mind. There's no longer that mindset. Those scheduled losses, that's the 162. It's a long journey. Fine. There's scheduled losses in the long journey. Not anymore. Now, not on the last week. Not when the number 1 seed's on the line.
Yeah, I wish there wasn't a scheduled loss. It's just how it goes sometimes, Mike. These losses happen. You got to put a team of partiers, vibes officers. It's going to happen at times, but they're done with the fifth starter now. It's over with. Done. Don't have to worry about Walker. You're going to head into the postseason. You got Wheeler, you got Nola, Sanchez, and Suarez. Those are your 4. Walker, sayonara, goodbye. Do you think he's left off the roster? Because I think he's going to be left off the roster. I think he is no way he's on the playoff roster.
0%. 0% chance Taijuan Walker is on the playoff roster. 0% chance. No chance. No.
Yeah. No way. No how.
He was on the roster. He was on the roster last year and never threw a pitch.
That's what I mean. Like, there would be no point to have him on the roster. I get, he makes however $70+ million, but there's no reason to have Taijuan Walker on the roster. I would be shocked if he ends up somehow being in the bullpen or something.
He will not be on the roster. Last year, they put him on the roster. I don't know why. He never threw a pitch. So at least they said last year, look, you're on the roster, but we're not using you. This is why this whole thing, like, Thompson it's his fault. He keeps putting him in the game. In the regular season, if Dombrowski is making you carry him on the roster, then you have to use him. In the playoffs, Thompson's saying, you want to put him on my playoff roster? I don't have to use him now. All right? I don't have to use him every 5th day. I'm not going to. So he won't be on the roster this time around. You're going to get your 4 starters will be Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez, Suarez, and then your bullpen arms. You're going to have Kerkering, Banks, Alvarado, Hoffman, Esteves, Strahm, that's 10. Ruiz would be 11, and probably one more guy. Who am I forgetting? Maybe Spencer Turnbull is the guy?
Yeah, Turnbull could come back. They're thinking he could come back. That'd be a nice guy to have maybe in a spot to get him in, get some work. He was good in the beginning of the season. Maybe as a long reliever, you could have Turnbull come back. That would be interesting.
Yeah, so he would be an option. I'm trying to think. Lazar, I guess he's a possible option. Yeah. So you have other options. Walker would not be. I think they're going to keep 12 pitchers and 14 position players.
Yeah, I think you're right about
Although
that.
the lineup tonight, I don't know if we got a little bit of a. They're starting Hayes in left field tonight, and he is batting 9th, and Marsh is in center field tonight, so no Rojas. I hope this is not a preview of what they might do.
You know, that's a heck of a transition, Mike, because nugget number 2 is Rojas is out of the lineup tonight, Mike. This could be a preview, like you just said, of the playoffs, right? Austin Hayes batting 9th in left field, Marsh in center field tonight. Against a righty, okay, I get it. Rojas needs to be starting every day. We talked about this before. Rojas' glove is so important to this team in center field. We've seen it. Marsh dropped the ball the other night. I forgot about it. People forget. He dropped the ball. I know they won the division, but he dropped the ball in left field the other night. I know he's a decent left fielder and he's a decent outfielder. Fine. But Rojas, you need his speed and you need his glove out there starting every night. You got to platoon Hayes and Marsh. Those are the two that need to be platooning. Not Rojas in center field right now. We've come a long way with Rojas. You need the capabilities of him on the base pass as well as in center field, having defensive runs saved, go galore. So that's what you need out of Rojas. I don't like this Rojas not starting in center field. He needs to be starting throughout the postseason, not matchup based. Hayes and Marsh, they need to be platooning, not Rojas.
Talked about it with Bob Wankel yesterday. I mean, surprisingly, Bob, who had been kind of anti-Rojas for most of the season, said, I can't believe he's changed my mind on this, but he agreed. McGarry today said he doesn't even think it should be a conversation, that Rojas is the guy that should play every day. The other two should platoon. I 1,000% agree. I don't even see how this is a conversation. Rojas, you got Hayes in the 9-hole tonight. Him in the 9-hole against right-handed pitching is a lesser option. It's a lesser option, and he's a lesser defensive player, lesser speed. All the intangibles go to Rojas here, and it's not close, quite frankly, because for two reasons. Marsh is a better left fielder than Hayes is. So if you had Marsh in left field tonight and Rojas in center, that's your best defensive configuration. So now you have a lesser defense, and quite frankly, Rojas is a better offensive option, sadly, right now, than Austin Hayes is. It's sad, but it's the truth.
But it's where we're at, right? Like Hayes, I just don't trust him right now. He's not good enough. He is a platoon player that they traded for thinking he's a starter. He's not a starter. He's just not. With where he's at right now, he's not the guy. Listen, Rojas is batting .282 in his last 15 games, 39 at-bats, 11 base hits, 4 RBIs. He's been better at the dish. And if he can get a bunt down, if Johan Rojas can get a bunt down in the playoff series, that'd be magical if he's able to do that. And if he's on base, the havoc he can cause on the base pass is huge compared to what Austin Hayes can bring you.
And that comment you just made is interesting because with Rojas in the 9-hole, you are more apt now to ask him to bunt. I don't know that you're asking Hayes to bunt. You might say, he hasn't bunted a whole heck of a lot. So you might feel, you know what? Rojas is up. Let's use him to bunt. You might feel in your mind that he is a player that I feel more comfortable allowing to bunt. He has bunted a lot more in the second half of the season. He just offers way more intangibles than Hayes. Sadly, I was hoping Hayes would have came over here, gave the offense a little life, but they're hitting him in the 9-hole, which is where Rojas generally hits. And I'll take the defense, speed, and quite frankly, people look at Rojas and say he can't hit, he can't do anything. It's not even that he can't hit. It's that he can get on base by accident sometimes. He can hit a ball so soft in the infield that he can beat it out. Austin Hayes can't do that. He has to actually get a hit. He has to find a way for the ball to find grass. There are ways Rojas almost ass backwards himself on base sometimes. You know, he swings at a pitch and then punches it down the right field line and ends up getting a triple on it because he's so fast. So he just adds so many more things, but defensively, you cannot give up any runs because your defense gives up runs with this team. You cannot have a play that's misjudged in center field by Marsh, who has done it way too many times in center field. He's a much better left fielder than he is a center fielder. You cannot have a ball that is misplayed. Now listen, having Marsh in left and Rojas in center is clearly your best. But how about the play Rojas made the other night where he almost went to right field and caught that ball with Castellanos standing in front of him? To me, it's a total, like, pitching and defense. That's what wins. I don't know how the Phillies. Now, listen, maybe they'll change it. But tonight, I'm wondering if Hayes is in the lineup tonight just to get him some playing time before the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that could be a possibility, that they're trying to get him playing time, see where he's at right now coming off of the injury. That could be the possibility. But there's no way he should be the starter, no doubt, moving Marsh to center field. Do not platoon Marsh and Rojas. Rojas and Bob Wankel, I mean, yeah, I'm on his side too. Like, I've come around, and you and I have come around on Rojas a little bit more over the course of the season, right? He's gotten better. They sent him down. He's been better since they sent him down and brought him back up. Right after all the injuries, he had to come back up. He's been better, and he's been better at bunting. That was the problem last year. He couldn't bunt at all last year. This guy in the 9-hole, he can move guys over, flip it over to Schwarber. That's huge offensively. But the main reason is the glove. And the glove, he needs to be out there in center field. He can make catches a lot of center fielders in the major leagues can't make. Like, it's Gold Glove territory what he can do in center field, and you need that in the postseason to make big defensive plays. That's why I don't think Rojas should be out of the lineup whatsoever. Don't bring him in towards the end of the game for 2 innings. That can't happen. You need him for the entirety of the game in the 9-hole because Austin Hayes, you're just plugging him in there. Austin Hayes really isn't giving you too much. Rojas offers more to this lineup, has more intangibles than Hayes does right now. And Hayes coming off the injury, I don't know what you're going to get. You haven't gotten much when he has played. So Rojas needs to be starting in center field. There's no doubt about that.
All right, we'll see. Saturday, October 5th. They got a long way to go. I think that's when they're going to start. It looks like that's when the division series will start.
I will be there, of course. You know, probably in the nosebleeds again. I'll be back for that game. All right, nugget number 3. Let's go to the Eagles injuries. Smith, Lane Johnson, A.J. Brown, all out at practice today. Not out there. They were out, not seen on the field. So there has not been a game where both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have played and have not played since Brown was acquired in 2022. And you also have to remember, Britton Covey is now out. He's headed to the IR. So the Eagles are extremely thin at receiver, Mike, right now, heading into this game against Tampa Bay. This is concerning. Is this a scheduled loss coming up against Tampa Bay because of all the injuries with where they're at? Brown's out. It looks like Smith is going to be out. Lane Johnson has the concussion issues as well. Covey, they're short at wide receiver. I don't know. I'm not feeling too confident heading into a Tampa Bay game this weekend.
Well, Tampa's owned you. They beat you 32.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to say they owned you. You beat them last year in the regular season, but they got you in the playoffs. They beat you in the playoffs the year before that as well. Todd Bowles has really done a good job against this team. You're very shorthanded. And keep this in mind. You know, we talk about all the time, you know, oh, this team looked terrible. The Saints had looked great for 2 weeks, and last week they looked pedestrian. The Bucs had looked great for 2 weeks, and last week they lost at home to Denver.
Yep.
Does it feel like Tampa has the bounce back game, and you are kind of scheduled for, hey, we're so short-handed, how are we going to find a way to win on the road against a team that made the playoffs last year? I think they're in a tough spot, obviously, when you're basically replacing your entire receiving core. I couldn't even tell you the 3 guys who are going to play receiver this. What are you going to go? Dotson, Johnny Wilson, and Paris Campbell, I guess?
Oh, that's brutal. I mean, yeah, that's essentially with what you're going with this week because, like I mentioned, they have never played a game without at least one of Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown in 2 years. So this could be the first time in years Jalen Hurts hasn't had one of those guys on the field. What does that look like? How much are you going to get Dallas Goedert involved? That's what they did towards the end of the game against the Saints. They only scored 15 points. So you might see a little bit of a different Nick Sirianni taking some field goals, not taking as many risks. That could be a factor heading into this week, not being as aggressive because you don't have those playmakers. You still have Barkley, you still have Goddard, but you're missing your two guys on the outside. They could take away a Dallas Goedert easily if, you're going to Dotson and going to these other guys and not having those superstars. And Britton Covey, another guy who's out. We're going to see Cooper DeJean out there having punts, a lot of injuries. And we also have to remember, they're way under 500 without Lane Johnson in the starting lineup. So that's another concern you have to be mindful of. And Tampa Bay has had your number lately.
The Dwight Howard. I'm looking at a story about Dwight Howard's on Dancing with the Stars. Apparently, he's one of the favorites. He's one of the favorites to win this year's show. But
76er
without Lane Johnson, yes, that's been probably the one guy over the years. Their record is so significantly worse when he's not in the lineup. So yeah, it's all stacked up right now that you shouldn't be feeling so good.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating weekend in Tampa. I should have stayed, Mike. I still should have stayed when I had my flight, diverted to Tampa Bay, had the layover there. Should have stayed in Tampa Bay to, see 2 road games. I'm pretty good on the road this year. 3-0 with all these Philly sports teams. Not a great number with the Nicky Nosebleeds at Citizens Bank Park and all the home games. So we'll see what happens when I go to this first playoff game. But nugget number 3, final pack, 3-pack of nuggets today for you, Mike.
All right, Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, they're brought to you by the Fanatics Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games. For more, visit oceanac.com. All right, Nick, we'll talk to you tomorrow, man.
All right, Mike. See you tomorrow.
All right, Nick Earnshaw, the Nuggets are back tomorrow in its normal time slot. Also changing time slots is the mailbag. Frank Close has his Phillies mailbag coming up on the other side. We'll get his thoughts on the Phillies lineup, everything that is happening over the last 4 games of the season. Frank Close's Phillies mailbag joins us coming up next here on the Sports Bash.
We have the perfect.
Get 15% off a set of BrakeMess Select, Select Pro, or Import Direct brake pads and 2 rotors now at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
For sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
529 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Frank Close's Phillies mailbag this hour is brought to you by Kia Acura of Atlantic City for a great car buying experience. Check out Kia Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road, Egg Harbor Township, your small but friendly dealer. Online at KiaAcuraofAtlanticCity.com. Phillies tonight, interesting lineup decision. We'll get into it with Frank Close. What does it mean? We'll get his thoughts now. Our Phillies mailbag is here with Frank Close from 97.3 ESPN.com. I know you got a lot of mailbag questions this week. We'll get to those, but Hayes in left, batting 9th. Marsh in center. Is that a clue of what the the Phillies might be doing come playoff time?
I think it's possible. The Phillies traded for Hayes to be a starting left fielder. Unfortunately, the sample size you saw was kind of small. We haven't really seen him do much against right-handed pitching just yet, but he's going to have that opportunity these final few games. And if you look at his numbers against lefties, he performed really, really well in those opportunities. So you definitely want Hayes there against lefties, and you might even want to put Marsh there against lefties, because they're really not getting much else from the center field position. I mean, Rojas' batting average is a little bit higher than Marsh's, but there's not a lot of production out of that batting average. So I think that you're probably going to see that be your starting duo most games, even as you head into the playoffs.
Interesting. So do you like Hayes in the 9? Like Hayes in the 9 hole for me is basically I would take the speed and the defense of Rojas and the potential. Look, their batting averages are about the same. He actually hits better against right-handers than Hayes does. I would take his speed and defense over Hayes. No?
I'm not sold, to be honest. I don't think his defense has been as good lately. I don't think he's figured out how to use his speed yet. I think Johan Rojas has a lot more development to go to really hone those skills. Just in general, he almost made that catch of the year, which unfortunately ended up being a home run a couple weeks ago. But I think he's got some room for improvement. So I still tend to think that he should not be starting. Now, when you get to the 7th inning, if the Phillies have a lead of a couple of runs, I might be putting him in there for defense at that point.
All right. Well, I just totally disagree with you there. We've had battles with this, me and some friends. I mean, to me, I want him out there as much innings defensively as possible. I think Marsh stinks in center field. He's much better in left field. And you cannot give up a run because he misplays a ball in center field. I'll tell you this, though, Frank. It would be different if Hayes had been somewhat productive against righties. He has been not productive at all. So you're basically putting him in the 9 hole, which is a wash with Rojas. I mean, I think Hayes is a better hitter than Rojas. Don't get me wrong. But I think Hayes, as an outfielder, way less. Speed, way less. Not doing much against right-handed pitcher. I'll take the chance with Rojas playing and helping me out defensively and then finding different ways to get on. And if I have to, I'll bunt him. I don't think you're going to bunt Hayes and use him in that manner either. So I just think the intangibles Rojas brings is much better than Hayes. Now, the Marsh thing, he'll play most of the time because you're mostly going to see right-handed pitching. But last year, the Phillies played Pache in the 2 wild card games.
They did. I think in an ideal world, you have Brandon Marsh and Austin Hayes platooning in left field. But to do that, I think you need to have a stronger center fielder who gives you a little bit more. Look, I think they've tried to get Rojas to bunt. He has not excelled at it. I feel like if he could get the bunting down, you can live with him more. I mean, I think there's still a lot more to be written on Johan Rojas and a lot more improvement forthcoming. But I think right now I'm personally using him as a speedster on the base path after somebody else got on and as a defensive sub late in the game.
I'll tell you, we've had this conversation with a lot of people. You're the only one that has gone this direction. So I give you credit for it, man. Everybody else has said it's not even a question in their mind. You got to go the other way. But Frank, that's why you get paid the big bucks, man. Hey, listen, we'll see.
I go against the grain.
I hope that Hayes starts to turn it around. He's been so bad against right-handed pitching that to me he's just a wasted spot in the order, and it weakens you everywhere else. To me, and look, this is what I like about the other configuration. If Rojas is playing center and Marsh is playing left, I now have Hayes at least as a bat if a lefty comes in the game to face Marsh. It gives me a move there, and it gives me a move if I have to hit for Rojas. The other way around, I am not using Rojas to hit for anybody, so it really takes a bat off my bench, and it weakens me defensively. So there's so many more pluses with Hayes on the bench than there is with Rojas on the bench.
No, I think the bigger solution is in the offseason, you find a way to get one person who can play left field every day and do it well.
Well, listen, they
move on.
Their offseason, they're going to have to figure out big changes if they can't find a way to win a World Series. If they disappoint again, you're going to be looking at major changes to this roster, possibly. Now, there's not a lot of changes you can make, but you're going to have to find something to kind of shake the tree a little bit. Let's get into some of the mailbag questions. Mike wants to know, should Bryce Harper get some rest with that injuries? He's been banged up heading into October. There's no time to rest. He's going to get a whole week off. All these guys are.
Yeah, I think that was really what kind of drove my answer. Well, yes, you want to give them each a break. I think each of them, you're going to see each day somebody is going to get a day off in the last several games. But yeah, as you said, they need to get their timing consistent. They're going to have that long layoff. Chances are, I know they have not clinched a bye yet, but either a Brewers loss or a Phillies win, one or the other is going to probably happen. The Phillies will get a bye, and then they're going to have a little bit of a layoff until the division series starts. So I would like to see them keep their timing. I think you're less worried about what happens in the pitching world. Like last night, they sort of, I don't say threw the game away, but starting with Banks and then going to Walker, and you knew they were going to parade a lot of the back end of that, not the back end in the good sense, the last ranked relievers in their bullpen to get through yesterday. But I think you're going to see them each get a little bit of a break. I think if, I think Harper's going to get a day. I think Kyle Schwarber's going to get a day. And then on the Schwarber day, then you can put Harper in the designated hitter role for the night to give him a little bit more rest. But yeah, I think they want to keep their timing going. And then during the days off, I'm sure they'll play some simulated games at Citizens Bank Park to keep themselves fresh. But, a couple people have complained. Let's be honest. The Braves, out of the Braves world, you heard a couple times, that layoff hurt them. the last couple postseasons. Well, it's going to be the Phillies' turn to have that layoff. So you want to keep that timing going as much as you possibly can.
John wants to know, who would you rather play in this division series, assuming you even get that bye? I'll tell you what, there's not a great option. Padres playing great. Diamondbacks, don't love that matchup. Mets, bad matchup there. Not a great option here. Milwaukee, by the way, would be a potential other one.
Like, it's the playoffs, right? You want to win, right? So if you're going to win the playoffs, you need to be a good team and you need to beat the good teams, right? So whether you face a team that you're scared of early or late, or you're hoping that someone else knocks them off.
Well, put it this way, Frank. I'll interject with this. There's no Miami this year in this field. This field has is what, 7 teams? They're all loaded. I mean, they're all capable of winning the World Series. Miami last year, not so much.
Yeah, the teams that they're going to face this postseason are good. And you know what? I will say there were a lot of teams in the National League around the midpoint, kind of teetering around the 500 mark. Well, a lot of them, thanks to some acquisitions at the trade deadline and players rising to the major leagues, they've gotten pretty good. I will say this. I would not personally pick a team and say, well, I hope I play them first or blah, 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 blah. I would say, though, generally, the San Diego Padres are probably entering the playoffs, the hottest team at this point. They went on a run where they were 41-16. That's a pretty fascinating stretch from the Padres. They went from being about a 500 team, about 100 wins in, 100 games in, and they're exceed 90 wins and into the playoffs. So the Padres, I think they're perhaps the one, if you think way back to the 2007 season when the Phillies caught those hot Rockies going into the playoffs, the Padres will be that really hot team going into the playoffs. So I'm not going to say that I want to see the Phillies dance around them or one way or the other. You're going to have to beat the teams like that if you're going to make it to the World Series, right? So my perspective is just win, but separately I'm going to say those Padres look like a pretty scary team right now.
All right, I would ask you this question. I hope I know the answer to the question, but Taijuan Walker will not be on the playoff roster, correct? And what is his future?
I think he's not on the playoff roster. I feel like that's pretty set. But the only reason that I think that you're going to see him in spring training is that if they release him in the offseason, he's going to sign as a minor league free agent with somebody else and have spring training to show that he belongs in the major leagues. Now, we know his velocity is down. That's affecting a lot of his pitches. If he's going to show up to somebody's spring training and show that he is going to be a valuable piece for somebody, it might as well be the Phillies who are already paying him. So I think, Andrew Painter is a possibility for next year's rotation at some point. You need a little bit more depth. I would just hate to see the Phillies release him and then he shows up in spring training for somebody else and actually has the tools again. So if he's going to have the tools next year, it might as well be for the Phillies.
All right, Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com. I don't know that they eat the money. With 2 years left, they might bring him back next year, see if he has anything, and then make the decision. I don't know that they make the decision ahead of seeing him first. So I might agree with you on that. But, man, I just think he looks cooked. He just looks like he's – it doesn't appear that he's hurt, right?
I don't think he's hurt. I think his velocity is a little bit down, and he hasn't really figured out how to pitch yet. I think as Larry Anderson said, he's got 6 pitches. Find a way to throw a strike with one of them. I think right now his velocity's down. I think he's a little thrown off. He hasn't figured out how to overcome that and throw a strike. And so, maybe in the off season, maybe he's got some more strength and conditioning going on that can get him back to maybe where he was. You remember the beginning of last year, Mike, he was the one that carried the team his first year when Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler were scuffling a little bit, for the pitch timer or whatever reasons we've heard blamed for that. But he kind of carried the Phillies for a while. I mean, if he came back in that form, at least gave them something to bridge the gap to an Andrew Painter or somebody, that would be helpful. But we don't know. We don't know if he's just he's not going to recover that velocity again. Some pitchers do lose some velocity and work their way around it and learn how to pitch. Others might not be able to do that. So I think we'll find out in spring training if he's got anything left in the tank.
Well, I hope I don't see him again this year in any way, shape, or form.
Unless probably will on Sunday, Mike.
Unless the Phillies clinch. I mean, if he pitches on Sunday, what if that game is for number 1 seed? Do they not care?
I think they care about the bye more than the number one seed. I mean, I think if they get the bye, they're okay. If not that, I think they're certainly not going to try to pitch one of their aces and then risk getting them hurt before the playoffs or something like that. I think
you don't think that Nola, who's scheduled to pitch Sunday? I think Nola, Wheeler, and one of those guys, right? You don't think they're going to take their turn?
I don't think that the starting pitcher will take their turn on Sunday. They jumped around a little bit, thanks to the clincher. So they didn't announce starters yet. So they could do a couple of things. I think one possibility is, since last night would be the fifth day for the group that pitched last night. If they wanted to skip Aaron Nola, they could.
Nola's scheduled for Sunday.
Yeah, no, it would be Nola if you went 5 days in a row. But they have an off day in there to spread that out. So the people who pitched last night could pitch on Sunday.
Well, you have the whole week off. I mean, you would think, because they're not going to start if they get a bye. The division series starts on Saturday the 5th. So if you pitch Sunday, Wheeler would pitch Saturday. That means he's going to have a whole week off before he pitches. And that means Nola, if he doesn't pitch, that's a long. I would think they at least pitch like a 5-inning game. You don't think?
They might or they might not. I think it depends on what other options they have available. Yeah,
I got an option for you, Walker. It's not a great one.
Well, if they don't need to beat the Nationals, they might win anyway if they pitch Taijuan Walker. But I think at that point they just want to make. I guess it depends on when they clinch the bye and when they feel comfortable that they have things set up. But
if they win,
you don't want to risk an injury right before the playoffs.
If they win tonight and Milwaukee loses, they would clinch the bye. So we'll see if that changes anything.
Correct. Yeah. So only one more Phillies win or one Milwaukee loss, and that's it. The Phillies hold the tiebreaker with Milwaukee.
All right. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, our Phillies mailbag. Of course, you've got the Phillies tonight. It's Suarez getting Sanchez tonight. Sanchez tonight. You got, by the way, the pitching setup for the last stretch of games. Sanchez is tonight. They're off tomorrow. Suarez on Friday. Wheeler on Saturday. Nola on Sunday. They are the scheduled starters for the Phillies the rest of the way. We'll see if they go down that road, if they clinch and all that stuff. Man, so many still decisions and questions. And by the way, you've got, are they going to keep 12 pitchers, 13 and 13, 14 position players, 12? Who's the guy that gets called up? There's all that still that needs to be decided. Bohm, by the way, not in the lineup tonight. They're going with Cody Clements at third base tonight, so no Bohm in the lineup tonight. So very interesting play by the Phillies tonight as they get ready to play.
By the way, Mike, if I could bring up one really interesting thing, the Braves are currently one game behind the Mets. They're supposed to play at Atlanta tonight and tomorrow, and they can't because of the hurricane. Oh. They might have to play a doubleheader on Monday, which decides who goes in as the wild card, and then play immediately the next day. So if you're talking about the other teams, they're going to be that could be just fun to watch as a spectator.
That I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I didn't realize that the hurricane might be a problem down there as well. All right, Frank Close, usually on Tuesdays with the mailbag. We had to have him on Wednesday this week, but great job as always. Although we did have some disagreements today in that mailbag, but that's just okay, Frank. I appreciate the time as always.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com, does a great job covering the Phillies. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say, too, about the Rojas thing, he bunted the other night. He seems a little bit more comfortable bunting. I think they've used him in that role a little bit more. This is more of an indictment on Hayes than it is that Rojas is some outstanding hitter. I agree with Frank. I mean, he's not a great option. He has a lot more development that he needs. Sadly, okay, this is sadly, think about this comment. He's a better option in the 9-hole than Hayes is against right-handed pitching. That's the sad part about it. But he's a far superior player. By the way, the text board is all over Frank and agreeing the fact that they can't play Hayes. And I don't even think this is a decision. I could be wrong about this. I don't think this is hey, we traded for Hayes, so he has to play every day. It's okay if he platoons. If he platoons and contributes, you still made a trade for a guy that contributes. I don't have a problem with that. If you make a trade for a guy and he hits 350 against left-handed pitching and he helps you win against lefties, I got no problem with that trade. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show, on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. Subscribe all over the place and take us with you wherever you go. Coming up tomorrow, we're live at Chickies and Pete's in Egg Harbor Township. So stop out tomorrow. EHT, Chickies and Pete's. We'll see you there. McMullen, DeCecco, Casey Joyner, one thought every game. That's all tomorrow. We finish up the show with the Bet365 Play of the Day. I hit both of my plays of the day last night. I won you more money. That's next.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, 5:52. Thanks to our friends at Kia Acura of Atlantic City. Great car buying experience. Check out my friends, Rocco and the team at Kia Acura of Atlantic City. All right, what did I do last night? Gave you 2 winners, right, Josh?
2. Iglesias and Shohei.
I did. Iglesias has been on fire. 17 straight for him.
I feel like half of your picks have been Iglesias.
Well, he's been on fire. I'm going Caitlin Clark tonight, by the way.
Back game?
3-pointers. Yeah, she got poked in the eye. 3 or more 3-pointers.
Okay.
They play tonight in the WNBA playoffs.
They got to win this game or they're eliminated.
Yeah, and if she gets eliminated, maybe she'll be in the Phillies broadcast booth.
Maybe she will.
Yep. Yeah, Iglesias, by the way, he's now got hits in 17 straight. You can bet him again tonight. He's on the list. By the way, Ohtani was the other one I gave you. He had a hit last night. You can get that. I like, now, if they play, I guess the weather could be an issue.
Yeah, they may not play tonight.
Yeah, because you got Ozuna has hit 7 straight games. Castellanos is hitting 6 straight games. If you want to put some money on him.
I can never bet on Castellanos.
Okay. Pretty good, man. He's not wooing you. He's not selling you.
He has sold me that I don't want to trade him anymore.
Wow. I'm going to go with Caitlin Clark tonight with 3 or more 3-pointers. She's done it in 11 of her last 15 games. She had a bad game on Sunday. She got poked in the eye.
Yeah, Carrington tried to act like she didn't do it on purpose. Some people think she did.
So Carrington, by the way, if you want to get in on her, 6 straight games, she's had 4 or more rebounds. So you can get that as well. Aaliyah Boston, 10 or more points. She's done that in 4 straight games as the playoffs continue for the WNBA. By the way, the ratings, how about this? The Sunday ratings for Caitlin Clark up against football, NFL football, Sunday afternoon. The game was at 3. 1.8 million watched Caitlin Clark and the Fever up against football.
Can you imagine what the number would have been if there was no football?
Well, some people are wondering what the ratings will be tonight with no football because it's a Tuesday. And I said, I don't know why they wouldn't have played the WNBA. Why not play Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday for these first round of the playoffs?
Makes sense to me.
Jeez.
But what do we know?
By the way, Cole and LBI just said it is confirmed the Mets are playing a doubleheader on Monday. The games have to be played whether or not the Mets and Braves clinch because of seeding. So that means the winner would have to fly to San Diego for game 1 on Tuesday. Not ideal, but hey, that's the situation. Good information there, Cole.
Better them and not the Phillies.
Better them. All right, that's it for me. I'll be back tomorrow live at Chickies and Pete's. Stop out. Egg Harbor Township. We'll talk to you then. More Sports Bash tomorrow.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.